UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Sanji's come. Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. Tonight we focus on if Uganda can have a non-violent, a non-abusive election, especially looking at 2026. Can we have a difficult, hard conversation on what kind of Uganda we all want? Or can the reforms suggested by Chairman Mao be the solution or the litmus test to get us to blue-black, or it's a pie in the sky, or an experiment that is just about to be botched? That's the conversation we have tonight about the reforms there that have been proposed, especially looking at the future of this country. That's the conversation tonight, so let me introduce the panel so that we can get into that conversation. On my immediate left, Dr. Sarah Berete, the Executive Director for the Center for Constitutional Governance. She's here with us. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, Timothy and viewers and fellow panelists. Glad to be back.
Thank you for coming back, and I hope this conversation will be very interesting since I have you and the person that I'll introduce last. Next to Dr. Sarah is Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, the leader of the Women's League at the National Resistance Movement and a member of SEC. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, our listeners and viewers, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for gracing us. Next to Honorable Lydia is Honorable Lubega Segona Medad, the Member of Parliament representing the people of Busiro East and a member of the National Unity Platform. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Next, I'll skip the gentleman there and go to the extreme end. He is the President General of the Democratic Party. He is the Minister in charge of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. He is referred to as Chairman, Honorable Mao. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Timothy. Good evening, our viewers.
It's good to have you. Lastly but not least, senior citizen of the country, Honorable Captain Francis Edward Babu. Good evening, sir.
Oh, good evening, and thank you for inviting us here. Sorry, I was thinking about cats and dogs when I came in here. And there's a gentleman who let the cat out of the bag by telling us that Haitians were eating cats and dogs in Springfield, in Ohio. So I was trying to find out what this is all about. And then I came to listen to somebody telling me something called monkeypox is brought about by eating monkeys and rodents. And so I'm getting a little bit worried.
They have also said that it is spread through homosexuality.
Homosexuality.
They were not referring to the monkey you and I have.
Oh. So that has been my evening.
And I'm stating
yes,
a medical opinion, not a political opinion.
So you can be part of the conversation. Go to our YouTube channel, let us know what you think, or our X platform, hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. Drop your comment there. The number is 0709 60 25 92. Drop your comment by text or WhatsApp. Let us know what you think. Let's get into this conversation straight away. Honorable Minister, let me get to you. Reading the Daily on Sunday, you were at the top of it, especially telling us exactly what we need to be able to discuss. You're talking about presidential term limits. You're talking about open vetting. You're talking about the affirmative action to have 2 term limits there, proportionate representation, members electing the presidency. These are some of the suggestions. Give us a brief of these suggestions and where do they come from? What's the spirit behind them?
Even though those ideas have been attributed to me, they are not necessarily mine. Over the years, Ugandans have come up with a lot of proposals. So let me give you the sources of these proposals. Number one is what was proposed by the Professor Sempebwa Constitutional Review Commission. Many of the proposals were not implemented. So that is a source book for us. 2, we have a number of private members' bills that have been mooted, but the standard response from the front bench of the government has been that we are coming with comprehensive reforms, so don't jump the gun. The third source is from the Supreme Court in the Amama Mbabazi case. The Supreme Court came up with 10 proposals. If you allow me, I will share them briefly. The other source is from political parties. Political parties have made proposals, and other institutions, for instance, the traditional institutions of Uganda, cultural institutions. Now, I start with the one of the Supreme Court. The ones of the Supreme Court relate to adjudication of disputes also. Naturally, when there is a contest, there is bound to be a petition by one side alleging that there has been cheating. So the Supreme Court made some provisions, matters of discussion, and some of these are constitutional. They gave their guidance on the time for filing and determination of petitions. They said that the provisions of the Constitution are inadequate. They are saying that within 30 days, the court cannot gather and analyze evidence and make a decision. So they have proposed that that period should be reviewed. That is under the Presidential Elections Act. They have proposed that. In fact, they have proposed 60 days. If the parliamentarians agree, that will be the change, so that the courts take up their real role. An election petition, especially the presidential election petition, is not a normal election petition. In fact, the courts are supposed to inquire. It is more or less an inquiry. They are not just supposed to restrict themselves to even the evidence which is filed. They are supposed to step out and really look at anything that may help them come up with a good conclusion. Of course, we have to consider the time within which the president must be sworn in. And I think in Uganda, the swearing in normally takes place much later after the elections. Therefore, this is a reasonable proposal. They also talk about the nature of evidence. Normally it is by affidavit. The courts say that we should admit oral evidence. In other words, those who have witnessed election rigging should come to court and talk and to be cross-examined. They also made recommendations on the time for holding fresh elections. The law says if a presidential election is annulled, fresh election must be held within 20 days. They are proposing a more realistic and therefore a longer period, more than 20 days. The other one is the one which is really at the heart of the debate, even in cabinet, the use of technology. I have stated here before that the Ministry of Justice prepared amendments to the law to make electronic voting compulsory, and also introducing 2 levels of biometrics. That is your facial eyelids, that is, and fingerprints, so that if one is not accurate, the other one can work. We have even gone as far as proposing that the presiding officers should wear body cameras with body cameras, whatever is going on at the polling station will be on record. The debate became contentious because apparently many people believe that when you introduce technology, you lose control. In reality, this is a law that the president supports. He is actually fully on board, but there were a number of ministers who had lots of reservations, so the proposal was referred to a committee. Now, this can only work if we act very quickly to enact this law. Mark you, if you introduce technology, that means you must also train those who will use the technology. You cannot enact the law 2 months to elections and then you expect that you will have people who are properly trained. Also, the voters need to be sensitized, including other stakeholders. The Supreme Court also took note of the unequal use of state-owned media. That means your very own UBC and other state-owned radio stations. Now, under the Presidential Elections Act, Section 24(1), the law is good. It says that presidential candidates shall be given equal time and space on state-owned media. I was a presidential candidate, and I can assure you, I never had equal time. That should make us note that it's not just about the law also. You can have the best laws, but if there's no political will to implement them, then you may as well not have laws. UBC was singled out for condemnation by the Supreme Court of Uganda. They said that UBC failed in its duty. So what does the Supreme Court recommend? Sanctions. That if you fail to give equal time, there should be sanctions. So we have to have those proposals to punish officials who block opposition political figures from accessing public media. The other condemnation from the Supreme Court is about late enactment of legislation. That one, we plead guilty. And we hope we'll be given a light sentence since we are working on it. It's not the Electoral Commission which is to blame. It is the government which is supposed to initiate these laws, because most of these laws have massive financial implications. So backbenchers definitely are barred by the Constitution from making these proposals for enactment of the laws. As a result, we end up with last-minute, hastily enacted laws which require amendment even before the ink has dried on the assent signature. The Supreme Court also made some recommendations on donations. I have listened to you people discussing the commercialization of politics. Right now, heads of parastatals that are planning to contest, they now send donations during fundraisings through their local agents. You find somebody is an executive director, somebody is a managing director, somebody is a top official, and they now want to become parliamentarians. And because they may have access to state resources, they can only now build up their name recognition by sending huge donations. I have been in fundraisings where people who are not politicians are announcing donations of 30 million in one fundraising. Most of the members of parliament who are incumbents are struggling. They cannot afford that. So The proposal states that you can only solicit funds to organize for election during the campaign period. And of course, we know that the president is a very generous donor before, during, and after elections. Now, if a president is an incumbent and he has a platform of a candidate,
And the chest.
obviously he will have an unfair advantage over others. So the purpose of this proposal is to create a level playing field.
Okay.
So the Supreme Court proposes that the giving of donation by all candidates should be prohibited. That is what. But I've also heard the president complaining that it is also becoming too much even for him. That's why the Parliamentary Committee on Government Assurances has a long list of unfulfilled pledges from the office of the president. The last two concerns the involvement of public officers in political campaigns. From my own experience, many people who have government jobs believe that it is their duty to keep the government in power. It's a natural instinct, but the purpose of a civil service is that they are supposed to be a kind of a welcome and farewell committee. They welcome the new government and professionally brief them on what they are supposed to do, and then they also see off the outgoing government. A story is told of a lady who has served in the office of the president for very long, a lady called Margaret Lalam. When the NRA took over, she didn't run away. She was waiting for the new occupant to tell them that, look, I am here so that you can function. Because you need people to tell you. There may be passwords that you need to share. You may have to receive keys. There may be assets that the new people need to take care of. If Uganda were to be a nuclear power, you must give the nuclear code to the new president. So, fortunately, we are not. So the Supreme Court has proposed that public servants should be prohibited from being involved in political campaigns, and that there should also be sanctions against those who campaign. Now, there's a particular group of public servants called resident district commissioners. Those are public servants according to the law, but in reality and in fact, they all become campaigners and mobilizers. So these are the recommendations of the Supreme Court. That's why I stated at the beginning that even though they are attributed to me because I'm the one talking about them, in reality, I am simply letting people know that we have compiled these provisions, and I'm going to be meeting the Uganda Law Reform Commission so that I see the latest compilation. We, of course, have got to go and brief the president about these proposals. We get his input, and then together with the cabinet secretariat, we prepare the papers for cabinet.
Okay.
As far as we are concerned, we actually have the proposals. If we are going to carry out public consultations, they don't have to be too long, because most of these proposals, particularly those that you are referring to, which are really about the Constitution, they are proposals that are not necessarily about elections. They are about the Constitution, but we also need civic education.
Okay.
In the budget of Electoral Commission, there is virtually no money for civic education. We have been proposing that political parties allow the Electoral Commission to use their platform to educate those who gather for rallies. I don't know how that can work, but it's a cheaper way. If the Honorable Medad Segona is addressing a big rally, immediately after prayers, he can say, let us have an official to tell you how to exercise that right. Not that spoiled ballots are so many. Do you know that a lot of the ballots are spoiled basically because of lack of civic education, and then because of rumor mongering and now social media, stories of rigging can start even before the polls open.
Let's come back to that, Honorable. Let me bring in Dr. Sarah here. Doctor, you have listened to the references he has spoken about Supreme Court, Justice, different commissions that were there. But I also want to add to what he has said. 2016, we had 15.2 million voters. 9.8 were valid. We had 8 million people that did not vote. That was about 35%. 2021, 18.1. Only 10.3 were valid. 8 million did not vote, coming to about 44%. When you hear his reforms, when you hear these reforms, will they yield anything?
Well, Honorable Mao has presented a range of reforms, both for the Constitution and the electoral laws. They sound good on paper. I saw a quote in a Saturday, New Vision, where he was quoted as an outsider inside the cabinet. And he's speaking as an outsider inside the cabinet because he's yet to have a discussion in cabinet. One would have assumed that a minister, when he speaks to the public, is communicating a cabinet position. But this is still a ministerial position. It's, if I understood him well, it's not yet a cabinet position on reforms. Among the references he was making, he forgot where we partnered with him as part of the political parties on the compact for free and fair.
Compact.
Yeah, for free and fair elections, civil society,
Yes.
organizations and the political leaders, where they moved all over the country from gathering views on what the Uganda we want in terms of constitution and electoral reforms. The compact is still also gathering dust. I want to go straight to the proposals that Honorable Mao, some of them that he has explained. First is to say that the Supreme Court proposals were implemented partially, partly through the Magezi bill, where he picked a few of the legal petition timelines to escort the age limit bill and try to sanitize it. So a few of the reforms in terms of time to petition, time to file, those extensions were delivered through the age limit bill, and now an act, the Constitution Amendment Act of 2017. We also had partial implementation when Professor Sempewa and another went back to the Supreme Court in the court of contempt, court of contempt application, where they were asking for the arrest of the Attorney General, or the Attorney General to show cause on why he had not implemented the reforms in a given timeline. And a few other reforms were implemented in a rushed manner ahead of 2021 elections in electoral reforms. The two pending reforms from the Supreme Court recommendations is the punishment of public officials who engage in partisan conduct and campaigns, and the other on the regulations or the legal framework for use of technology that Honorable Mao says is before cabinet. These two are the pending reforms from the Supreme Court directives. When you come to the reform, for example, for parliament or proportional representation or parliament MPs to elect a president, it suggests a shift from the hybrid presidential system that we have to a parliamentary system. I don't know whether this proposal at this stage describes the nature of parliamentary system that we should have, because there are types. The common types of parliamentary systems are three. We have the Westminster system, where you have elect parliament, and then the majority leader becomes the prime minister, minority leader becomes leader of opposition, or minority leader, depending on the name, and you have government formed in that manner. And the other key characteristic of this type of parliamentary system is that a parliament can be dismissed through a vote of no confidence. We have this in the UK, Canada, India, Australia, and New Zealand, and it will be good to know, is this the way we want to go? We also have other types, like the consensus system, where there is power sharing, and this is normally common in societies that are so divided either according to tribe or according to minorities, and you come up with a power sharing arrangement or broad representation of the several categories of people, or a coalition government. And this is common in countries like Belgium and others. The third common type is a parliamentary republic, where you have a head of state is separate from a head of government, and the president has limited powers, and it's only a prime minister who is answerable to parliament. This is the system in Germany, Italy, Greece, and Portugal. But we also have the South African example, where you have a parliamentary republic system. The president is a head of state and head of government, but you have a bicameral parliament with the National Assembly and the council at the provincial level or lower assembly. And you have some people elected directly, others chosen according to the party that has won. So if you have, for example, President Ramaphosa winning 59%, then they will control 59% of parliament. You have the other parties also, according to the percentage that their party gets, is the portion that their parliament controls. So maybe as the debate unfolds, it would be important to know what is it that they are proposing.
Okay.
And you look at other proposals, like a 2-term limit. I think really this has been on table for long. But I want to briefly comment on the affirmative action, the term limits for affirmative action. Honorable Mao is proposing that all affirmative action seats should have a 2-term tenure. There are different categories of these affirmative seats. Whereas it's true that the Constitution, the framers of the Constitution, recommended a review of these affirmative action seats every 10 years. Yeah, but you know, it has, I don't know whether they've been reviewed or we've just been endorsing them the way they are. But for example, youth by nature, it's 1 term. I've not seen an MP who becomes a youth MP who becomes a youth and then runs again for youth. Those ones, the age cut them out, and we might not need to bother with them. But also there are calls from young people to say, we need to remove these seats. If the youth are indeed the majority, according to census, about 72%, partial results, are young people. 72% of our population are young people. The demographics, the aggregated data from the voter register, we are likely to have 80% of voters as youth.
Thank you very much.
And then the question is, I want to conclude. The question is, are these minority or they need some kind of other affirmative action? The second category that is interesting to look at as I conclude is the army. How did the army come into parliament? According to the 1995 UPDF Act, the army was referred to as listening posts in the movement system. Movement system where we had broad representation. They came into the parliament as listening posts. Here we are in a multi-party dispensation, and you have the army. Now they are no longer listening posts, and they sit with the ruling party. Yet the Constitution demands that the army must be non-partisan and non-political. Isn't it time to get them out of a political arena?
Thank you very much. Let me come to Honorable Lydia Bonyoto there. Honorable Lydia, when you hear these proposals, as they are still proposals right now, and look at come October, we'll have hardly 12 months to nominations of presidential candidates. What do you make of them, and can they make headway?
According to the National Electoral Commission calendar, it's exactly 12 months to the nominations of members of parliament, because they start on the 17th and today is the 18th. So this conversation maybe is meant to just set the mood, but many of the proposals, in my humble opinion, I like the reminder about, I've read the Citizens Compact was very interesting. I've been referring to it many times. It had very good proposals, but they've been on table. It's one of those areas, and it looked like it had been very well participatory and conclusive. People went around, civil society organizations, individuals, the elders. So it has a futuristic arrangement and a spirit. But for me, the timing, I mean, what can you do in 1 year? First of all, between now, I'm talking about nominations for members of parliament, if the calendar has not changed, would have been done by 17th or 18th, which is today, is exactly 12 months. Now, before that, political parties themselves should begin processes of preparing their own election processes and stuff like that, while the electoral getting ready to compete for power. So there's actually no time to look at the big picture. Even if you wanted to get quorum in parliament now, it's going to be a battle. And some of the proposals, in my humble opinion, would require a referendum. I know that Article 1 talks about the power of the people and that it can be vested in 2 other elected leaders, but there are fundamental issues you cannot just leave for parliament. Will require a referendum.
Like what reforms would require a referendum?
You cannot talk about changing a presidential system, and you just go to have election, they done it by members of parliament. This is now personal, because now people are asking, is Mao speaking as a president of DP, as a Ugandan, or as a minister? Sometimes we come here as individuals because we have our own rights as nationals to make an opinion. So I'm saying that there are some proposals which are now a subject of debate now, which cannot just be left to parliament. I would not support changing a system of presidential elections without going for a referendum. And you know what referendum means? It is heavy,
it's a general election.
It's more or less a general election. So you cannot now fix that within the 12 months when we are going for general elections. So one of the, I've just come to share one of the biggest challenges we have is to shelve very important lessons learned of the previous general elections, and then they are brought up just at the doorstep of another general election. Mistakes are bound to be made, and now where are our priorities? Our priorities are now to prepare for the general elections or to prepare for the amendments, because they all cost money. I'm told that the Electoral Commission now has a shortfall of their budget. They released the calendar, attached a budget, and they had rolled out their budget depending on the quota and the releases. They could be behind some of the scheduled activities, not because they don't want to work or they're not ready, but because the resources are not commensurate to the calendar. Now whatever we are proposing now also has cost implications. So is this conversation just to excite the public and to set point to the mood, or are we serious about what we want to do for the good of the country and for the governance tenets of our country? These are debates. But because of this now, you can see that it has now even become an agenda for debate. So the conversation is beginning, and we are setting now the country into the mood of electioneering. Parties are now starting to look at delegates conferences, beginning to have structures of elections, ultimately have flag bearers, and begin campaigns. Now, where does this leave the reforms that we think should be growing? So my humble opinion is that this debate should have begun in 2021, July. You do what they call in the military action after review, AAR. We've just come from an election. What are the changes, whether by court or experience from the field? I like, if I had a chance, I would really want us to build onto building electronic, the IT methods of work into the election process, including not only voting, even vote counting.
Yeah.
Many people lose elections through declaration forms, filling, and vote counting. And let me tell you why many people lose elections. The manipulation, these polling stations are out in the compounds of schools or churches or mosques, religious, faith-based compounds. Now, they begin by counting, tallying the vote of the presidential. These Maos were 27, I think, in the last election. They count all of them one by one, one by one. By the time you finish the presidential election candidates, tally, and you fill the declaration, then you sign. The process is too long, it's manual. Then you got the county MP, same day, isn't it?
Yes.
So by the time you get to 7 o'clock, it's dark. You are now beginning to count the woman member of parliament. You are using small phones, this katochi. Why would people be manipulated? Yeah. By the time you finish counting the woman MP, it's around 1 a.m.
Yeah.
So we have not provided for, can you, when it is dark, can you bring the elections, vote counting the next day, or can you not?
Where would the ballots?
So there is that area is too gray, and there is huge abuse of vote counting. This one I can tell you, and you can take to the bank. Because I was very surprised in one constituency which was following as a candidate of parliamentary. One constituency had 27 candidates. Another constituency has 12 candidates. And they must count one by one. An agent, one, they count, they show you. They show. By the time you finish counting just one seat, and then you tally, and then you pack, and then you fill the forms, and then you seal off. It's dark. There are no lighting. The electoral commission is so limited. So candidates suffer. If you don't have lanterns in every polling, my polling station is at 276. Am I going to provide the lanterns for every polling station? 276 lanterns or bulbs or whatever it is in open grounds. So I think that electronic should be invested in. But my only problem is the capacity for our country to be able to not only afford to procure, to test, to train, so that we invest heavily. So the electronic should be able to make it efficient, and that results should be instant, especially the aspect of voting, but also counting and tallying.
Thank you very much. Honorable Segona, let me come to you.
But the time is not there. You have 12 months to go.
Your response, and I quote you verbatively, you said on affirmative action, yes, we should impose it because if they have not been emancipated enough, there is something fundamentally wrong.
Correct.
When you hear these reforms and your comment made, what do you make of them?
Good point.
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much. And I'm happy today to engage in the same debate with the Honorable Norbert Mao. I think Sarah has summarized Norbert very well, an outsider in cabinet. And why I'm very happy is because he led a team. We worked together to develop that compact.
Yes.
It's very comprehensive.
Yes.
Very, very comprehensive.
I've seen it.
And it was consultative enough. That's number one. Number two, I think one common denominator from the discussion so far is that the time is not enough. And I do not want to hold Genome 7 innocent on this. Seated where I am, I don't know what Norbert Mao seated where he is. One day we had a debate here in the studios, and I was saying, look at the contradiction. On the one hand, the president is saying, what Norbert Mao is talking about, I don't know, we have never discussed that. And Norbert was saying, no, we did discuss that. In 2015, following the movements we made across the country to generate the Citizens Compact. And that was about 4 years after the compact had been compiled and submitted to government. We were promised robust, comprehensive, constitutional and legal stroke electoral reforms. They were nowhere to be seen. I remember writing a minority report on this, reproducing the entire citizen government as Shadow Minister for Justice. In the 10th Parliament, same thing. The Speaker of Parliament, Right Honourable Rebecca Kadaga, was insistent and said, no, you bring these reforms. But if you don't bring them, I'm going to allow private members to do so. And as nobody quoted, right in Article 93, we have limitations as private members. Because once a bill has financial implications, you are not allowed to step there. So we relied on the goodwill and sincerity of government. Of course, you could not see that. You cannot have that. I remember, and I repeat again here, when the Honorable Fred Ruhindi made an undertaking on the floor of Parliament, to the effect that immediately after the next election, we shall come up with a Constitutional Review Commission. The same statement was repeated by another decent one, Ndugu Hakana. Time. Because time has a bearing on the financial preparation. As Lydia says, the Electoral Commission has issued a roadmap accompanied by a budget, but already the Electoral Commission is complaining of the budget shortfall. The entire country has a budget shortfall, madam. Because in July, I saw a statement issued by the PSST when he made the release for Q1. Remember, if you have a budget of, is it 72 something trillion, you expected in a quarter to have released 18 trillion. I think it was supposed to be 18.5. And he said, I think he had released 5 trillion. Meaning, you already have a shortfall of 13.5 trillion in Q1. In Q2, therefore, we expect you to release 18.5 plus 13.
About 31 trillion.
13.5, about 31, 32 trillion. Now, it cuts across the entire economy. With that, you do not expect the Electoral Commission to be able to afford the kind of budget based on the projections that are coming out of this bill. The recent example of Rubos in census should teach us, if we intend to learn. On day 1 and day 2, the enumerators were crying across the entire country that the gadgets were not working. If these gadgets in any way depend on electricity, we should go back to revisit where we come from, and please tell me about the load shedding. And tell me if these gadgets are going to work. How about the distribution of the network across the country? The supplier is in shambles and tatters. But you're promising me and exciting me that you're bringing a digital system of election. The computers that we've been using at polling stations have all been collapsing. Now, after voting, what happens? I mean, if you've been reading elections, the physical paper election, including where I have a DR form signed by everybody, and officers, some officers of the Electoral Commission, go and forge a DR form. I handled an election petition in Kampala Central. I handled an election petition in Kalungu district, where officials of the Electoral Commission went out of their way to print, go type and print a declaration of results form. And the Electoral Commission goes out of its way to certify those ones and refuse to certify one given to another candidate and plucked out of that book. So How are Ugandans going to be able, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing to go digital. It's a good thing. But two things. One, the trust and confidence that when it comes to sending those documents by email, you will send the right results. Number two, that we're not going to have incidents like the one we had in Nakuru, where the Lord Mayor and Dr. Veside had to be arrested because they went to do what they called intercepting a system that was interfering with the elections, with the election results. So it doesn't stop at voting. It goes beyond voting to transmission and declaration of results. I went somebody who was in charge of the elections in a particular region, and I will not mention the region for his safety, and said, for me, those results you are reading in Kampala, you know where you got them from. We were not involved. At some point, you saw the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, okay, being told, you read this. So once you do not have the faith and confidence in the system, that one is failure number one. Dead on arrival. I have had colleagues, Sarah and Lydia, talk about this proportional representation, the method of voting for president. I did not hear Honorable Norbert Mao talk about it. I only read about it in the papers. And I did not want to believe that somebody can even dream of changing the voting system in 1 year to go. 1 year to go. And again, more disturbing, today, you hear my the Honorable Norbert Mao say, on the one hand, that the president is in support. On the other hand, we are going to compile and take to cabinet. So where are we? Has cabinet cleared this, or they are still the thoughts of Ministry of Justice stroke the Honorable Norbert Mao, because he went with these views anyway before he joined the cabinet. Do not forget that we are talking about electoral reforms which were simply selectively picked after the decision of the Supreme Court, and trying to say as if they were compliant. The core of the proposals, actually directives of the Supreme Court, as enumerated ably by the minister, were not considered. We are talking about changing the cosmetic change of the name to something called Independent Electoral Commission and so on and so forth. As Sarah said, nobody is talking about the role of the army. You see army, soldiers, voting and ballot stuffing, grabbing ballots at a polling station. I have talked about it, and I remember we had a heated debate with my brother, the Honorable Captain Babu. And, taking, forcefully inserting them in the box and walk away with it. As Norbert says, this has nothing to do with the law. Because who doesn't know that ballot stuffing is illegal? Who doesn't know that pre-ticking is illegal? Who doesn't know that the soldiers are not supposed to participate in partisan elections? Who doesn't know that RDCs are actually bad? It is about the spirit of constitutionalism. It is about the love of our country. Who doesn't know that you're not supposed to stone another person because of an election? We all know that. One, we are just selfish, and including the president. Two, people have criminal dispositions. Three, we are acting in bad faith. Do you want to tell me that for something we've been talking about since 2011, because mainly this debate started in 2010 before the 2011 election, do you want to tell me that the president is waking up to realize that this is necessary today?
Okay. Thank you very much, Honorable. Let me come to Honorable Captain Francis Babu. Captain, you already talked about the cats and the dogs. That's Springfield. But let's come to here.
Ohio.
Ohio.
Yeah.
Pets.
Let's the pets.
And pets, you know.
Let's come back home. When you hear these reforms, constitutional reforms, electoral reforms, are these the pain points of Ugandans?
I'm going to start where my brother ended.
Why are they pressing right
We're
now?
just bad-mannered. Ugandans are bad-mannered. Ugandans have got a problem with being honest. Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore told us that a man called Deng Xiaoping of China told him, if you want to make this country vibrant, have 3 words. 1, have people who've got merit to lead the country. 2, that's meritocracy. Number 2, have people who are pragmatic. And number 3, have people who are honest. Just that one word, honest. If you expand that word, you get your answers. No matter what constitution you make, no matter what laws you make, if you have got people who are bad-mannered, it will never work. That's exactly what, so it's a behavior. We need psychologists, actually. Our behavior is bad. Full stop. And it is that behavior that creates the nuisance, and these people are talking about the symptoms of that nuisance which has been created.
So who is breeding this bad behavior?
All of us. I'm not going to say it is one person or the other. There's a lot of selfishness. Not all of us are angels, and I want us to really be very careful. When we were making the Constitution, the framers of the Constitutions came and said, we want a presidential system of government. And one of the reasons they gave, they say, Ugandans should choose their president. The president should not be chosen by somebody else. Yeah. So you go and vote for your president. A presidential system has certain, the model behaves in a certain way. A presidential system is followed with a system of legislature, which is different from a parliamentary system. It is either you have a House of Representatives with the Senate, and that came about with a very big debate. And that one, you don't even have a government side or an opposition side. You have a majority and minority. All of them are legislators. But here, somebody said, no, we need a parliamentary system here, and we shall have a presidential system there. In fact, Ugandans are used to electing their president. And so when I hear you went to the citizens, I wonder what the citizens were saying. They don't want to elect their president anymore? That's the point they told us when we were in the constitution. Another point, I don't want, if we are going to review this constitution, I think our parliament, the way it is now, should not touch the parliament, should not touch the constitution. Parliament, the way it is, we should choose another body to review our constitution, which is not parliament. And that body should be very clear. When that new constitution which is reviewed should start, that's a different argument. Now, there's nothing wrong with the system everybody is talking about. A presidential system is good if you are going to behave yourself. A parliamentary system is good, whether you took the Westminster or whether you take any of the other 3 our sister talked about. They're all good. The question is, which one of those systems are you going to behave yourself in? If we take a presidential system, then let it be a presidential system. And let's behave the way the system is supposed to operate. Because the problem is, a lot of our people pretend and lie. They talk as if they've just come out of Harvard and Oxford, you know. And Ugandans, the 45 million people, are being controlled by these 557 people to play around with this constitution? No. Time has come. Let's get a body. I don't know how we get hold of it, which will look into our constitution and review it. And let us not take bits and bits. Let's not be selective. Let's review the whole constitution.
Yes.
From the beginning to the end.
So are you saying after 29 years, this constitution is done?
No! Constitutions are reviewed.
Yeah.
Hey, these people who are lawyers will tell us that when a law was made a certain time, it was very useful that, but after some years, it is overtaken and therefore must be reviewed. There's nothing wrong with that. For example, I've asked my friends, you know, you talk about 5 years term limit. What is the basis of 5 years? Where do you get the 5 years from? How do you say it is 5 years, not 4 years, not 3 years, not 2 years, not 6 years, not 7 years? Where do you get the thing for 5 years? We need now people who have got a little bit of intelligence to think and tell us. We don't want mediocres in this one. 2 terms limit. Yes? Why? Let's answer these questions. Let's not just put there saying, we want 2 limits, 5 limits. No. Tell me, why do you want 5 years? Give me good reasons. Why do you want two term limits of 5 years? Let's give people a good reason. Not just copy the American system, don't copy the British system, don't copy. You just tell us in Uganda, depending on the way we are, how many years should a government be in before we have another election? And what are the reasons? What are the reasons of the 2 terms? Is it the example of some people who have misbehaved? So we said, no, we must have 2 terms. For example, I'll tell you this, and all of you better know this. The age limit was refused by a lot of people when we were making the constitution, and it passed through the window. It is something we did not agree to very well. Because there's nowhere, anywhere in the world where a constitution has an age limit. What we have in there are biological issues which talk about the human body. If you become frail, or even when you have not reached a certain age, you are taken to the hospital and they say this man is incapable or capable. So let us go now and look at what I've been reading. We want this, we want that. If you want the South African system, because I saw it the other day when they were choosing the president, it's a parliamentary British system. Changed a little bit here and there. Right? What you're basically saying, you want your president to be elected by parliament. Really? Do we want that? When we had said we wanted a presidential system, we go from presidential system to a parliament electing our president? If that's what we want, don't review it that way. Let us look at the whole model. The presidential model, the parliamentary model, and we look at the various models, and then we look at Uganda as a country. This time we are not going to copy anything. We are going to say, wait a minute. If I have this model, will it work for our people? We are not going to base it on the politicians who are in parliament and in government. It will be the people of Uganda. Now let's get to another point. If you are going to review this constitution, I want it to be reviewed not only on the 3 arms of government. No, I want the whole thing to be reviewed, including the local government. The system of local government. 146 districts, and you call them districts? Hey, they are sub-counties. They can't even function. Let's have 15. Like, in fact, I was talking about the cities the other day, and I realized when people were proposing cities, they looked at the first 15 sub-regions we had, and they wanted each of those sub-regions to have a city. If you want a city for each one of those sub-regions, the 15s we had independence with, then it's time now for me to go to the constitution and say, no, let's have sub-regions instead of these districts. Reduce them from 146 to 15. Okay. That would, now, as I end, I want to say this. Please, there's nothing wrong with the parliamentary system, nothing wrong with the presidential system. The question is very simple. Do we sit down and review the constitution like sane people and talk to the people of Uganda to understand what we're doing and stop taking advantage of a situation by taking one system or the other? In 1962, by the way, let me finish with this one. You know what the people did in that 1962 constitution? They put there something called the federal government, semi-federal, and the other one. 3 of them in one constitution. They started fighting. The other day you went and made an authority of Kampala City Council. On one side you made an authority, on the other side you left the old city council. What is happening? They are fighting.
Okay.
So this time when we are making a constitution, we don't want to fight. We want to understand it.
Thank you very much. Let's read some feedback that has come through. This is Jamil from Koboko. My opinion is that we need to have reforms based on our ideologies rather than copying most of these things from the developed countries. The serious problem faced by African countries is benchmarking democracy on other societies' ideologies rather than African ideas. That is why up-to-date Africans are struggling to have peace settled in the conflicts that they have there. Okay? I have one here. Thank you, Timothy, for the show. Excellent panel there. I think that we need a thesis written on the reforms suggested by Honorable Mao to be made to the ruling government. Opposition working with government should be the best ingredient for building a robust democracy. This is Mulindwa Rugumayo from Fort Portal. Okay. Good evening, panelists and Timothy. David Ebong here. Democracy is more than just a fair election. It's about citizens' value systems in a democratic culture. Listening, tolerating views, self-discipline, ethics, integrity, value, responsiveness to society goals. Do we as citizens have values that transcend the quality of leaders? Does our education develop these values? Okay. Finally, there are many proposals made that include presidential elections, but can presidential elections results be declared at the constituents and district level and not just at the national level? Finally, Honorable Mao's proposals should include, okay, I read that. And thank you for the show. This is Godfrey from West Nile. Thank you for the presentation. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be starting with the Honorable Minister to dig into this, especially trying to diffuse the tensions around this. This and more after this break.
You used to tell me that I don't make you happy. All that time you would be complaining. I'll call you every day, yeah, yo, baby, don't know.
You can now get all the Chibuzi out with MTN voice bundles. Call all networks Kubei Dondoro. Buy a 25-minute voice bundle for only 1,000 or buy any daily voice bundle of your choice. Dial *100*21# and select daily or use the My MTN app. When we talk together, we are unstoppable.
In a world that never stops, find your balance, your beauty, your radiance. Welcome to Dr. Beauty, the show where beauty is more than skin deep. Join us as we explore the secrets to glowing skin, healthy hair, and the perfect self-care routines. From expert tips on skincare to makeup magic and everything in between. Dr. Beauty will unlock the code and show you how to embrace the beauty that's uniquely yours. Dr. Beauty, only on UBC TV, inspiring Uganda.
Coming soon on UBC.
Welcome to Inside Broadcasting.
Sharing with you the process behind what you see on the screens.
My name is Lorraine Masika Kazimoto.
Step behind the scenes and witness the magic that brings your daily broadcasts to life.
That's why I come out openly to actually tell you that I'm an investigative journalist. That even when you see me here, I'm actually investigating you guys. So you should be aware about that.
Experience the hustle, the heart, and the human stories of our on and off-air staff.
I see my phone ringing and I'm like, ooh, which number is this? I hear the president on the other line.
The President of the Republic of Uganda.
Of Uganda, yes.
Be inspired, amazed, and part of the journey that powers Uganda's most captivating TV and radio moments.
Because good broadcast comes down to an individual. They should be artistic.
This is Inside Broadcasting.
Inside Broadcasting.
Inside Broadcasting with Mark Wadula.
Coming soon on UBC.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Mascari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archived stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, every story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Welcome back from that quick commercial break here on UBC Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. In the studio, I'm joined by Dr. Sarah Birete. I'm joined by Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, Honorable Lubega Segona. I'm joined by Honorable Captain Francis Babu, and finally the Honorable Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, the Honorable Norbert Mao. A pressing message that has come through from someone in Kitugum says, thank you for allowing me to go through today. Okay. As we all know, elections always move Uganda to a whole different direction. Our Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, how best will he control or prevent the cheating of votes, or in relation corruption in Uganda by 2026? I don't think he's talking about corruption today, but we'll bring him to talk about corruption some other time. Honorable Minister, let me come back to you. Your reforms here in the submissions that are here, when you look at them, how will they play out before 2026 elections? Because they're a game changer.
There was a time I came here,
yes,
Timothy, and I said, we are dealing with a 3-phase transition. Let me repeat. Because many people are worried about the next election. But we should talk about the destiny of Uganda beyond the incumbent President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. So the first phase is where we are now, this debate here. In other words, I could call it the phase of problematization. Everybody must know the ailments. And that's why I would encourage everybody to speak freely about the ailments that afflict Uganda. For a disease to be treated, it must first be given a name. So, citizens have got to speak up. People want a government which is accountable. People want value for money. They want their welfare taken care of. And they want clean elections. Remember, this government came into power through a guerrilla warfare. And the reason they gave for taking up arms is that the elections were rigged. So the elections are the heart of democracy. So anybody who rigs elections definitely is not interested in democracy, is not interested in peace either. Because sooner or later, there is only so much that people will take. That's why we're having this discussion. Sarah, I'm glad you reminded me of the Citizens' Compact on free and fair elections. It goes into all the detail of having a trusted electoral commission, because these are referees. The current law is criticized because those opposed to the way the electoral commissioners are appointed say it is not one of the players who should appoint a referee. That's basically what they are saying. So we must keep these debates alive. So we are in this phase of problematization. I actually foresee a more unified political terrain after the next election. I may not have enough evidence, but I think from the little that I see, to implement the things we are talking about, we need really a very, very unified political environment. I would even hazard and say we can end up with a government of national unity in the 12th Parliament. The things that we are talking about cannot be implemented by the kind of polarized country that we have now. The issues are extremely important. They don't even have to divide us. Actually, most people are divided simply because we have a president who has been in office for long. In fact, so we have got many people whose only platform is to remove President Museveni. So I believe that there are things that can be done before the next election. They will have to be very few. The majority, the major surgery, even on the constitution, will have to be done after the next election. That is the one I call the bridge. So we have this phase one, where we are agreeing on the issues we agree with, and even agreeing on the issues we disagree on. Then we go to build to the bridge. During that bridge, everybody should pull in one direction to really design the new Uganda. And I think there will be much less resistance to that effort. The resistance is being dictated by the elections. And that's why even the debate currently is overshadowed by anxiety over the elections. So when we go to the phase of bridge building, that's when we'll talk about fundamental issues like changing the electoral system, which cannot be done before the next election. But still, my duty is to tell you that those ideas are with us.
Let me ask
and then the new Uganda will come in the third phase.
You say some of these can come before. What are those that can come before? But also, what can bring us together to that bridge?
Number one is how we talk, the leaders, what we tell our people. I'm one of those who has been saying, you know, all of us have got to mind our language if we want political hygiene. The president of Uganda should not refer to our citizens, any citizen, as enemies of the country. Because there's no need to call you an enemy. If you're broken the law, there should be systems of dealing with you. But once I immediately draw a line and say, you know, you are an enemy. And the political actors in the opposition should not be referring to an elected government as a junta, you know. If you refer to where I sit as a junta, then I know that you don't recognize my legitimacy, and there's even no reason for me to debate with you. So we must mind our language, number one. Number two, we must not preach political untouchability. We cannot take it as a matter of pride that we don't care what other people think, and that we are proud that we cannot be seen even talking to those we disagree with. That way you have mutual pariahdom. So the government turns the opposition into a pariah, the opposition turns the government into a pariah. You know, like we have pariah states in the world, like Myanmar, North Korea. For them it is a matter of pride to be sanctioned, to be condemned. They take great pride in it. In fact, North Korea, I think if a month passes before the CNN and BBC talk about them, they release a missile, they aim it at South Korea, so that the CNN can write. For them it is a matter of pride. So the government party must not say we are proud that we are destroying the opposition, because the opposition is what the brake is. If those who talk like that should try driving a vehicle without brakes, just to know that, you know, you need a force that sometimes says slow down, look around you and check your surroundings. And then the third thing is continuous dialogue. I said untouchability, that's almost the same thing. We really need to have the spirit of talking to each other. The other day I saw a video of the Honorable Bed Bwanika circulating, just because he went as a parliamentarian of the Agriculture Committee to talk about the need to protect coffee farmers by keeping the institution that is promoting coffee farming, UCDA. But all his political enemies on all sides were saying he has gone to cross to the NRM and that kind of thing. That toxic kind of talk does not create the kind of environment in which we can discuss this kind of things. And unfortunately, it has even infected the radio talk shows and so on. Lastly, the reason why I'm very confident about my three-phase transition is because I know the history of Uganda. Ask yourselves, what are the contours of power in Uganda? Before you climb a hill, you must know its contours. If you drive to Kisoro, Kabale, the road has to go a certain way by force. It doesn't matter whether the distance is going to be longer or shorter. It is dictated by the terrain. We have a history of violence. We have not yet addressed those grievances that people have. Many parts of Uganda are still grieving. So in that bridge, that phase 2, is where we are really going to have to do the hard work. So a direct answer to your question of what reforms are possible before the next elections and important. The first one is the electronic voting, which I said hit a snag in the cabinet. The proposal for parliamentary system, that has been a long-standing proposal of the Democratic Party, but now it is being discussed in the context of President Museveni. Opponents who want to bastardize the debate, they say the president is now of advanced age, he can no longer move. He doesn't need to move even. He has all his arms and legs all over the country. He is moving. So that argument is actually very weak. I don't think anybody is more mobile than the president because he's facilitated to move. He doesn't have to suffer the bad roads. He can move. The question is, we should debate that proposal on its true merits. And I don't think the countries where the president is elected by parliament are any less democratic. Would you say that Uganda is therefore more democratic than South Africa just because Ramaphosa has been elected by the parliament? The question should rather be, how do you elect that parliament itself? In South Africa, it is through a list system, proportional representation. Each party publishes a list, files it with the Electoral Commission, and based on the proportion of the votes, they send members to parliament. I can tell you, if we had proportional representation, NUP would have many MPs outside Buganda. But because of the first past the post, you find that NUP is restricted to Busoga and Buganda, and therefore gets presented as a parochial regional party, which it is not. It has a national support also in many parts. NRM or UPM rather would have got 5 members of parliament in 1980 if we had used the proportional representation, and DP definitely would have formed the government if it was proportional representation, and NRM would have more seats in Buganda if it actually was under proportional representation. We proposed this idea in our iPod summit. The president is not totally opposed to it. He said it should be studied further. But I can tell you that as far as universal suffrage for electing the president is concerned, the president is strongly in favor of it. Me, I'm in favor of, personally, and the party I lead, we're in favor of parliamentary democracy based on proportional representation. And I believe we will win the debate during the second phase of this transition in the bridge building phase. I think we are capable of winning because it is cheaper. People like my sister Sarah Virete, who speak the truth without perfuming it, will finally be elected to parliament because they will be on a party list and they will be ranking very high. As matters stand now, you don't stand a chance because you are going to go and tell people the unpalatable truth and they'll just throw you out. We will be able to get people like Dr. Maggie Kigozi into parliament. But a compromise of that is to allow for special seats that may even be nominated. We can put that. That is how a leader of a political party who becomes a runner-up can get to parliament and therefore resolve that problem which people are haggling about right now, about
leader of opposition.
About who is the leader of opposition. It can solve that problem. That way, Benedicto Chiwanuka would have nominated himself into cabinet, therefore not having to wrestle with Bataringaya, and that way the Honorable Robert Chagulanyi would not have any rope pulling with whoever he has nominated as his hand in the parliament. So I want to go on record that for the time being, the majority of Ugandans are worried about parliament, and I think rightly so, because if parliament is have given that power, and the way in which it is elected is not very satisfactory, there is rigging, there is this and that. Let's say if there's corruption, you know, that's how a foreign country can easily buy a president by facilitating the electoral college. So our proposal is based on conviction, and we started that in the 60s, before we knew of the NRM and President Museveni. Now the debate will be determined by what goes on inside the ruling party. Last weekend, I was having a discussion with a high-ranking person in this country, and we agreed that we have two NRMs. We have NRMO, the organization, then we have NRMG, the one which controls the government. So the O and the G sometimes don't move together.
So which one are you part of, the G or the O?
It's not in NRM.
The one he has a cooperation agreement with, the G or
the O?
The O. Okay.
Because the cooperation agreement was not signed by President of Uganda. It was signed by chairman of the National Resistance Movement.
How did you end up in government?
That's the G.
That's the G.
Exactly.
Let me come to Dr. Sarah. Doctor, for anyone to test water, you don't step in with both feet. This test that is going on of reforms, when you look at 2016 electoral violence, and you look at 2021, numbers are thrown around, 54 people lost their lives, 100 people. It seems like violence keeps escalating year on year. When you look now, people who have already gone up, posters are up, all these things are there.
Everything.
And the Honorable Minister has made suggestions.
How's work?
Age limit and the term limits.
I'm
This
now
was the
settled
testing
down.
of how they came in. What is the spirit behind this? What is being
You were in
tested
cabinet.
to be brought to Ugandans?
It is a headache.
Let me first comment on the violence in elections and the role of the security forces. It's actually the elephant in the room. Honorable Segona has talked about it. And if we had any low-hanging fruits in these reforms, in my view, we would look at 5 issues. What Honorable Mao calls the first phase in his 3-phase
Problematization.
terminology. So if I had a choice in the first phase, I would choose 5 issues. One is the role of security forces in elections, especially the army. We know the police has a clear role in elections.
0752
The army doesn't.
206.
The army presumably
206.
comes in on the invitation
306.
of the police. But if you talk to police away from the cameras, they will tell you they've never invited the army. So we need to resolve the confusion caused by the army in elections. The violence you talked about, the killings in 2020 November, no accountability to date. The disruption of political activities throughout the campaigns, especially those of the opposition, by the army. So we need, if Parliament could help us say, of course we know our security forces cannot be in every polling station on voting day. If we can determine, and I know there is a difference, you know, a clear diversion between the law and practice, but we've got to start somewhere. And that's what you're telling. Let's have the law. Whether this law is followed today or not, one day it will be followed. And even those who violate the law, one day they can be held accountable in a different jurisdiction. So you need to say that the army has no role in elections except if war breaks up. Then to say, in the event that the police officers and constables are not enough, who should supplement the police? Can we say then that we shall recruit election constables from civilians, not from inviting the army? And keep the army in the barracks where they can vote and they are away from our elections, except if war breaks up, because that's their mandate. If there is no war, let them keep in the barracks and leave Ugandans to determine their leaders. I wish we could achieve that, at least on paper. Whether it can be followed in practice is another matter. Then, can we have, number 2, campaign financing?
A capping.
The money we use in elections is obscene. Somebody spending 2 to 3 billion in a parliamentary race. If we turn our elections into a grand auction, we have no democracy. The bidder takes it all. So now we just have mafias buying elections. And that's not democracy. We need to deal with this monster of army in election, on money in elections. Number 3 is the issue of course, of digitalization of elections. Technology is a two-edged sword. If used well, it will improve trust and transparency in our elections. But it can also be manipulated to change the will of the people. So we need to safeguard, and we are already using technology. It's not that it is something we are debating. The Supreme Court took note in the Amamambaba's petition that we are using technology with no legal framework. So it's not that we are not using technology. The debate can be to what extent should we use technology. But we are using technology in our elections.
But when you talk about technology and there's no internet, like the last 2 elections, and the
internet shut down. It's
Yes.
not that there is no internet.
The internet shut down. Then we have the comment by the president saying he has evidence that with the technology that 1 million votes were stolen. Can this digital era really give us the results that you're talking about?
Hackers.
Well, I think, I want to still assume that the comments by the president.
Do we have the framework in place to manage it?
We don't have a legal framework. That's what the Supreme Court took note of 80 years ago. We are using technology in elections with no proper legal framework. 80 years ago, the Supreme Court took note of that. They directed the Attorney General that we should enact a legal framework and regulations for use of technology. Why is it very important? In that petition, the petitioners wanted to use backup data to examine how voters voted in selected voting places, polling stations. The Electoral Commission told the court that they did not have technology that keeps backup. Of course, everybody doubted that submission. But in the event that you don't have regulation, where it says you must keep this data, the equipment used must have backup, and you must keep it for either 10 years, so that whoever wants to audit a particular election can audit it. So when you don't have this legal framework, then you deny people of increased transparency in elections, of evidence to use, critical evidence to use in such petitions, and so many other things. Honorable Anyoto talked about a faster way of counting and transmitting and announcing elections. Of course. So we need to have a legal framework to know that in our elections, you can use technology for ABC functions, and there should be backup data for ABC, so that in the event that there is a need to criticize or examine that data, it is availed. In the Kenyan elections, we saw the petitioners were asking to open the servers so that they can audit how Kenyans voted. The technicality that came in was that the service provider had not signed up that they would avail servers. These are issues that a legal framework must state in black and white. What is it that we are dealing with? What can be retrieved? What are the do's and don'ts in use of technology? We don't have a legal framework, and it's very embarrassing. As I conclude, I see that your body language, my time could be running out. The first issue that we should achieve in this election is a transparent national tally center. Why am I talking about this? I have observed 3 elections in Uganda. The National Tally Center, the major occupants at our National Tally Center are the UPDF, police, prisons. Then you will see a few members of the international community, NRM agents, opposition agents are rare at the National Tally Center. In the last election, civil society were denied accreditation. We couldn't access the National Tally Center. I saw media who were asking what the source of results that were being read, and there were no answers. The computer screens at the National Tally Center are always empty. Nobody sees results as they come in, results as they are being tabulated, and the process of announcing. As Ugandans, we should be able to see presidential results as they come in per district. as they are tabulated and as they go to the announcing table. We should witness this process if we have elections or genuine elections in this country.
And before I get to Honorable Nyoto, I asked a question about age limit, term limits. The testing of the water was like this. What is coming with these reforms, if you look at it?
You know, unfortunately, those constitutional reforms, first the lifting of term limits came in with a change of movement to multi-party system. And it was intended, or the affected persons then, it was only one individual who could have been affected had we not lifted the term limits. Come age limit, same story. Only one individual was to be affected by that provision of the law. Even when Ugandans, like Honorable Mao has said, Ugandans are suspicious because of a failed political transition, you can't blame them. We saw President Joe Biden in the US being told to step down because he was around the same age as our president. And we have just celebrated the birthday. So I can't blame Ugandans for suspecting that even a change from presidential to parliamentary system could benefit one individual. You can't blame them.
Let me come to Honorable Lydia. How do we diffuse the tensions that are already building up in the country? And these reforms look good, they sound good. How do we diffuse them to have a peaceful election?
In my opinion, I do not see any tensions because most of the debate has been around, only that it has been resurfaced because of also the timing. If we have elections next year, starting next year, and it is just, the countdown is 12 months, I think we should have a minimum package to deliver in next year's elections. And then the people like Mao who have phases to do what, they can now
start after.
They can start that story after elections. You can't mix things. I'm being very honest.
Yeah.
You're going to mess people up. You're going to, unless you want to be the diversionary. It is, we don't have money, even for the minimum calendar that the Electoral Commission has given us. What the Electoral Commission has given us is the minimum to deliver 2026 elections within the legal framework they have. They have suspended any anticipation of any reforms. Now you are bringing reforms that are heavily having financial implications, but also legal implications. And first of all, they are less to look like they're the interests of the people, but they are also political actors who want to say where they will maneuver, shortcuts where they will maneuver through to survive in the next scheme of things of the politics of their country. People are putting in and say, where will I be when Museveni leaves? Everybody is, whether you say you are fighting Museveni or not, is in the mind and the back of the mind. There is a campaign to say the president is going, you know, he must to go. And therefore, when he's going, me, where will I be? You see? Where will I be? That there's also, and you cannot remove it from them. It's a natural thing to politically want to see where you will be as a national actor or as a local. But I think that let's de-risk the general elections next year by delivering what we need for next year and not mix it with a bigger agenda.
What can we put in place to deliver that election?
Let's help the Independent Electoral Commission deliver the roadmap they've given us. That's for me, that's enough. Because first of all, we should look for money, cause civic education, improve on the processes of what they've given us. The story of Mao's phases should wait because they're not tenable the next 12 months. Realistically, but if you don't be realistic, you can bring them. This parliament can deliver anything you want, they will deliver it. But I don't know whether it will work for us or they mix with the next general elections. Let's leave the current electoral laws of Uganda the way they are. Let's support the Independent Electoral Commission. We pray that the Maos of Uganda still remain alive and alert and the positions they hold, so that they can now, after 2026, take us through those phases they are talking about. Because I do not see us discussing the phases he's putting on table now. When they've been with us for the last 10 or so many years, there's an impact. I like that document. It looks so big, but it hasn't worked now. It cannot work within the 12 months. When the Electoral Commission of Uganda should have tabled the calendar with these provisions already inbuilt. You cannot table a national calendar. It is now moving with all the bad tires. Eh? It is not. Then you want to add, overload it. It will burst. It will knock. Already, like I've said, they don't have resources. There's no civic education. So they're supposed to compare and analyze the voter update vis-a-vis so that they make sense with the national census. Because we are going to begin debating numbers. You say the Electoral Commission has a different number, but we are also now reading what does the national census results look like. So they must reconcile all these things. And they have been telling us they are behind schedule, they don't have resources. So if you ask me, I would like to request Mao, because now, for me, I'm seeing Mao today, and please allow me to see you as the Minister for Justice, not those many other things that you hold in the country. As a Minister of Justice, the best you can do for us is help the Independent Electoral Commission of Uganda deliver the calendar they've given us, because one, we don't have time. Two, we have a constitutional responsibility to deliver the election 2026, January moreover. So 12 months. But if you are going now to add other things, we are going to be confused. Actually, you will contribute to the confusion now.
How do we...
And let me tell you, I was looking at the Director of Parliament. The census of this year has issued a very big statement about the young people of Uganda. The Constitution of Uganda talks about the age of the young people is 30 years, 30 years of age. So they are really the majority of the country, almost 70% of our countries, there are people below the age of 30. So if there are any reforms to make younger people contribute more, but again, if you look at the director of this 11th Parliament, over 90% of the members of Parliament are not 40. So actually, those 40, some of them are redundant. But that's for another day. Because for me, really, if there's anything I want to take away from UBC this evening, is let's support the Electoral Commission, deliver the calendar they have already released. Yeah. Let's not add or subtract. Let's just help them raise resources, or even review and tell them don't you reorganize them, and they deliver the elections. Meanwhile, these ambitious phases should come away from what the Electoral Commission has given us.
And that's why I want to ask you, because you're talking about the Electoral Commission, how do we ring fence it? Already there are suggestions of 5 new cities there. How do we ring fence it against all these other decisions that affect it in one way or another?
Which other decisions?
Like the 5 cities being suggested to
That's what I want Honorable Mao to work on as a Minister for Constitutional Affairs. At least to head up, he's the political head of the Electoral Commission. So I thought that he should focus on that. Is he willing to support them to deliver the 5 cities, or tell them to be pending? He has a bigger mandate, a legal opinion. His opinion would matter on such matters to help the calendar and the roadmap of the Electoral Commission be delivered. But if he's going to add his story of the phases, I don't know where he's going to, because now we don't know in what capacity he's talking these things.
Thank you very much.
But he's the political head of the general elections of Uganda 2026. And already they've run behind schedule because their electoral calendar is not as resourced in line with their budget.
Thank you. Honorable Segona, how do we build a robust democracy in this country, even as we look at its future?
Now, obviously, the way you're phrasing your question tends to lock me in a certain direction, but I decline to fall in the trap. First of all, if you make any false accusation against this government, that accusation will only be that this government has focus. Because if you have a minister tabling amendments to the public before they are tabled in cabinet, it is a sign of frustration. I know a thing or two about the Honorable Norbert Mao. I have worked with him and under him for some years. I know the pain that he holds on his heart, especially with regard to the amendments that he has presented to the public. I think what Norbert is doing is to be the Pontius Pilate of today. To say, for me,
he was washing his hands.
I've washed my hands clean. If you want to kill this man, you kill him knowing
that I've done my part.
Man.
Yeah.
For me, I'm innocent. I am a fair judge, but my hands are tied. That's what Norbert is communicating to the country. And if you're not able to see that, you have a problem. The first, I think he was right when he said, of course as a citizen lawyer, when he said the duty of the Supreme Court is to inquire, and that the Supreme Court in 2016 was disgusted that the laws are inadequate, the time is inadequate, and those do not afford them the ability and the facilitation they need to inquire into a presidential election petition. But the same Supreme Court in the year 2021 was able to say, no, even when you have that evidence, you are late, don't bring it before us. So we will not inquire into that evidence. I want to rejoin on what the Honorable Francis Babu said. This Parliament of today, in its shape, don't touch our Constitution. You see, one or the other, and I think this is where I get trapped or entrapped. Honorable Norbert Mao says, if you do not recognize me as an elected government, you call me a junta, then I also call you enemies. You see, I have a right not to recognize you as a government by saying you rigged my election. I have a right to describe you the way I see you. For example, if citizens are disappearing under your watch and hand, citizens are being killed and maimed, what name do you want me to give you? All in the name of reconciliation and talking. I am happy to talk. I can even speak to Joseph Kony, assuming he's what he's depicted to be. But the first thing is, you, as a person claiming to be elected, have a duty to put in place an environment for talking. I mean, Honorable Norbert Mao was the first minister to say, in my first 100 days, those politically persecuted people will be out. The next minister to say that was the man who said, now I'm a minister. Is it for young children, young people or something?
Youth.
Yeah?
Youth and children.
Youth and children. They are going to be out. He even came and said, on Youth Day, the president is coming to make a pronouncement. You're going to see them out. The next thing we saw, or closest to that, is to say, they have been forced to sign amnesty. So about the environment, forget. Honorable Babu, about your parliament. This is the parliament you have. And there is no way you can divorce parliament from making laws. Whatever the shape. It could even be worse in the next parliament. The few people you're talking about calling reasonable today, calling knowledgeable today, may not be there. I mean, parliament will have to do its work. I agree that we segregate those matters that require first, constitutional amendment. There are those that do not require constitutional amendment. There are those that may require referendum. We should go for them. I mean, following the well laid down procedure. The frustration I have seen in the minister tonight and my sister in their sake, that, unfortunately, don't mix those things which Norbert says people are preoccupied with the next election, and rightly so. But Uganda does not stop at the next election, and I agree with him. The first thing is to accept that this is a concession, that one, you have a bad government, you have an unfocused government that is seeking to think about doing things that ought to have been
Doing the
done
calendar
15 years
out.
ago. In other words, you have a government that has been sleeping on job. If you make that concession, I will congratulate you, Honorable Norbert Mao, tonight, that probably you coming has changed the terrain. When you talk, I think colleagues have been mixing civic education with voter education, because civic education under the Constitution is the mandate of the Human Rights Commission.
Human Rights Commission.
But they have not been doing it, and whenever they've been appearing before us in Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, or even in PAC, the argument is that we are not given money to do that job because it is not a priority of this government. Your government prefers dealing with people that are ignorant and therefore not able to understand things they are meant to understand. And when you compare us with those countries which are using what you call the proportional representation, the parliamentary system, etc., I mean, you lose the point. You miss the point. If they are not sensitized, or they are not educated, and they are not about to be educated, I mean, if you have somebody coming to swear in as LC3 chairman and is not able to make oath, tell me how, with your meager resources, you're going to do civic education, and within 1 year people know what they are doing. Now, there are certain things that do not even require amending the law, that have no rocket science. The involvement of the army.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell me that these generals that are commanding and commandeering people into election violence need any civic education? You a general, you a brigadier, you are a commanding officer. Do you need any civic education to understand that you're not supposed to do ABCD? Do you, if you are an RDC, if you're a deputy RDC stroke RCC, do you need any civic education to know your job? If you need civic education to know that these are your boundaries, then we have a problem, starting with the appointing authority. Now, when you have to be taught on basic things, to me, I mean, I don't even want to waste time talking to such a person. Now, is it difficult, is it rocket science to agree that we declare results, say, at the district, so that they are not changed between Lira and Kampala? Is that rocket science? Do you need any rocket science to know that you need basic infrastructure? If you have a presiding officer who signs results under duress, I mean, do you need to change the law to make provision for that? So I think finally what I can say, Timothy,
yes.
One, it begins with you and me. First, to know that this is my country. Unless we have people ruling this country and they are not Ugandans. I think one day, was it the 7th Parliament, we were there when Livingstone Okello said, in fact, we do not have a government. We just have a group of men and women ruling this country in conspiracy. So unless we have conspirators that have taken charge of our country and that have no desire whatsoever to improve the very basic infrastructure for a free and fair election. There are things which do not require law. There are things which do not require money.
Okay. Thank you very much. Lastly, Captain Francis Babu, how do we build a Uganda for all?
Very important. Like I said earlier on, we have to be honest when we are speaking. When I talked about Parliament earlier on, I went back to when the Constitution was made for this country. I was in NRC, and legal notice gave us powers to pass that Constitution. NRC could have debated that Constitution and passed it. But the people in Uganda said, no, wait a minute. This NRC, we are not very happy with it. Can we please get some people to do it? And yes, we did. We in NRC passed the law and formed the Constituent Assembly, which was an independent body, and it gave us a constitution. I am not saying this because I have anything else I have to do. My brother said, if I don't like the government, I have a right to say I don't like it. I also have a right to say I don't like this parliament.
Yes.
Are we clear?
Yes.
Yes. Don't think that parliament has got angels. No. I've got a reason why I'm saying this parliament should not play with this constitution. We are not happy with the way things are being done. And I don't want to go into what the accusations are against this parliament. That's not my work. But we are talking about reviewing this constitution, and we are saying if we want to do it well, the body has to be independent. Full stop. And whatever you like, you can say. Now, actually we did. If you go to the Hansard and you look very carefully, I must give that NRC an A1 by saying, yes, we accept, we'll pass the law. And those in NRC who feel they would like to be part of the constitutional making, they will go for the elections to be sent as delegates. Full stop. Our problem is not everything that is being said. Are we building our country? Can we have that in our mind, that we are building a country and we should stop being selfish because we want to be in government or in parliament or whatever it is? How do we build our country? How do we build our parliament? How do we build our executive? How do we build our judiciary? I'm not accusing anybody. I'm saying we're supposed to build them stone by stone. It's not going to come out of the blue. And we are not going to do it by copy. We've got to build. And that building is extremely important. Our political behavior and propaganda in this country is gone completely gaga. In other words, we say whatever we want and most of it is wrong. I find it very difficult for a man who is a lawyer, who has not proved anything, to accuse anybody. And actually, I brought this. The other time, they said the election had been rigged, we're going to court. Somebody goes to court, a few days after, he says, I withdraw my case, I'm going to the People's Parliament.
People's Court?
People's Court. We have never proved anything.
And he didn't give you a reason
and
for that?
Maybe he gave me a reason of propaganda. Or maybe he did not. If he had proved that they had done that to him, I would be with him. But until today, I have no proof.
But prove before somebody who says don't bring your evidence.
But when you were talking, I kept quiet.
No, because you have now accused
No, I kept quiet.
Gentlemen.
No, he has now accused me.
I want to give you a point to come back to.
No.
Captain Babu, please complete your submission.
No. He's been accusing people of things which are wrong. And he's a lawyer.
And the
lawyer knows that a case has to be proved, has to go to court, the judgment has to be given, and we shall follow that judgment. There was no judgment. There is no judgment, apart from accusing leaders of the court. And propaganda. Propaganda well built. You know, these people have got a cassette they have set up. They accuse everybody. Chief Justice is this. Chief Justice is having tea with so-and-so. These cassettes they have set up is propaganda. They're accusing judges. They're accusing everybody. I want you to prove a case to me of somebody who has done something. I'll support you. But if you don't prove anything, it's allegation. So, and I'm going to show you where it is allegation. Prove to me. There are people here whose elections have been annulled by court, and they have given a reason, and elections have been held the next day. We've had one where people went to court and the court gave certain things that should be done. And you've been quoting them here today. Now, this is what I'm trying to say. Don't go on propaganda. Propaganda alone will not change anything. What is going to change is to prove to us what you say.
Okay.
There are people, and I know it means. I've been a victim of rigging in this town. and involves certain people. I've never stood up to say who
And
they
what
are
did the court tell
and
you?
how it was done. All right? And let me tell you, if we go on like this gentleman of mine, because he's worried I might even talk about him.
Talk about me. Be free. Talk about me.
I want to say.
I'm around. Talk about me.
I want to say this. They should stop propaganda and bring out facts.
Okay.
And the the cheating of election is not one-sided. The political class here are all involved in rigging elections, and they do it in different styles. So, and they are given money by people within the system to go and rig these elections. And he is given money to go and rig so and so out, given money to rig so and so out, and they do it. So let us not be jokers here.
Okay.
And being threatened. No. Let me finish with this. It's very, very, very important. If we want to, where you were asking, how do we go forward? If we want to go forward, we all have to be honest. And this is the honesty is this. What has gone wrong, most of us know. Let's put it right. And to put it right, we need to be fair and listen to each other. But if you think you are a Superman and you are going to have a cassette of propaganda continuously played, it will not be accepted. Because this propaganda cassette is going all the time. In fact, it's like a spoiled record. It's the same thing over and over again. Let's reason on each issue. And even people in government who are doing the wrong things should be told that what you're doing is wrong. And we should give facts when we are talking about them. And I'll give you an example where I'm saying this. A few minutes ago, my brother said he saw people in the army stuffing boxes. Ballots.
Yes.
Stuffing ballots. I waited in court to hear which army group were stuffing boxes and where they were. I've never heard about it.
Okay.
I only hear it on that cassette. Okay. Now I want no. This is very important. The army here has got areas where they elect. In Kampala here, they elect at Makindye. What is that hill called? Kololo Hill.
Mbuya.
And then they elect near the All Saints Church. There are elections there. If there is anything that has happened there, nobody has ever taken it to court. And nobody has ever proved that these people have done it. But there's a sing-song that army people are permanently stuffing boxes, I don't think that's fair, even to our army people. I think what is fair is this. If something has been done, I agree. If it has been done, and there's a proof they have done it, I think they should be taken to court, and they should prove that these people have done this.
Okay. Captain Babu, time is fast spent.
Yes, I agree. And I would like to thank you there.
Yes.
But this business of stuffing boxes and army, and let me end up with the army also. We have 45,000 policemen in this country. We have to go and look after all boxes. If you don't have enough policemen, what do? Either you increase the policemen or you hire a special group to support the policemen. If you don't have that, who do you go for security? Who is next?
But Captain Babu, the last we did constables and we did LDUs. What did the army need to do?
No. Are they enough, even when you add them on?
Okay, time is fast spent. Let me start with Dr. Sarah. Our parting shots in 2 minutes. I know Honorable Segona will respond in his 2. Your 2 minutes over to Honorable Lydia, then Honorable Segona, Captain Francis Babu, and finally the Honorable Minister. Your 2 minutes.
Elections are a foundation of democracy. They give people a chance to determine the fate of their nations. Voting is a sovereign right, enshrined and entrenched under Article 1 of our Constitution. Power belongs to the people who will exercise it through regular, free and fair elections, and they will elect all their leaders. I don't think Uganda has attained a level of maturity that would require a proper functioning where a parliament elects a president. I don't support that proposal at this moment. I'm also calling for free and fair elections. The people who disrupt our sovereign rights to vote should stop. Everybody should cast their vote in peace and have it counted and let that vote be valued. As I conclude, I agree with Honorable Wanyoto that we need to fund the Electoral Commission to do its work, but also the people who overrun the Electoral Commission during elections, they need to respect the people of Uganda and leave the Electoral Commission to do its work.
Thank you, Dr. Sarah. Honorable Lydia, your parting shots.
The roadmap for the Electoral Commission is out. That should be the debate so that we stay the course, we remain focused. It's just 1 year, and give Ugandans a chance to clear the ground, look for resources, do civic, and focus on that so that we deliver the next election. But I also want to support Mao to be able to face the agenda, because it's good for Uganda. It should be beyond elections, but it shouldn't be mixed in this calendar, because to me this calendar is too important, because it's also bordering where we want to go as a country. Every election should be building to a cleaner, promising processes for governance in Uganda. We should be building, it's a building block. So let's not meddle, add a lot of stuff. I mean, and Mao should know that now he's a minister. What he says has brought me here in the midnight, because he posted the thing. It's not even in the cabinet, but because he's a minister, he's also a big man in the country. His signature matters. What he says matters. So I would like to request him that he is the political head of the Electoral Commission. We are all looking at him
that he
to
should not
deliver.
excite us.
We are all looking at him to deliver the next elections. Let him focus on the calendar, and if there is any amendments, it should be in line with what the Electoral Commission is saying. And if he has other issues he wants to deliver to direct the country, they should be faced, but through cabinet, at least the ones where he sits for now, so that we know that these have been what we call in NRM the right forum. Because now we are discussing his post. We don't know whether it is a post because he's Mao, the Ugandan that we know, or Mao, the husband of the Mugole now, or Mao, the president of DP.
We need other Bagole quickly.
Okay. So now, but it has caused it has gone viral. It has brought me here today to discuss. And yet I would like really to focus on the Electoral Commission, because I'm an interested party of the election calendar in Uganda, for my party, for myself, and also for the country. And it's a building block to cleaner and fairer, because it's our time. If we do not campaign to have a fair and growing electoral process that works for Uganda, our children will blame us. So I think he has brought a lot. It's like when you are cooking, it's like when you are cooking food, and then you begin adding in a lot of spices and what, you are going to make us get turbulence. So
thank you very much.
Please realign your thoughts and let us know when you are posting as who.
Honorable Segona.
I agree with anyone who says we should facilitate the Electoral Commission to do its work, in whatever shape it is. I don't agree with anyone who tells Norbert Mao, don't interfere. Don't talk about anything today. My thinking is, bring your things on table. Let's discuss and segregate what is possible to be done in 30 days, we do it. What we cannot do before the next general election, we reserve it, but we cannot fail to cane you for having failed to bring that thing 15 years ago. And now that you're the face of the monster, the monster that has failed to deliver
is
this.
The political head.
That's the point I'm making.
So we are now looking up
that the monster that has failed, and I mean the monster government that has failed to bring us these reforms for the last 15 years. So accept your canes, but we help you and facilitate you to do what is possible to be done. I agree with Captain Babu about the name calling. And I think I'm disciplined enough to know what to do, what to say, when, and how. But nothing stops me from complaining when, for the first time in the history of this country, a candidate who has 30 days to present his petition is locked up in his house, his phone is switched off, internet is switched off, He comes to tell you, I have brought evidence of soldiers' ballot stuffing. You tell him, no, I will not inquire into that. And the Captain Babu says, you are politicking, that is propaganda. In 2006, Captain Babu lost an election for Kampala Central. He complained, went for a recount and lost it, went for a petition and lost it. He continues to complain today that he was rigged out. And I say, yes, because if in his mind he's satisfied that he was rigged out, but the court did not give him justice, it is his right, as long as he does not insult a judge.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and have a good morning.
Captain Babu, your parting shots.
I think any review of the Constitution is important. We should review the Constitution. Whether you do it in phases, whether you do it rightly, the whole Constitution, that's fine. Now, that is important. We should look at it, but we should look at it very seriously. We should not look at it quickly and make mistakes, because we shall go back to the same boat. We should sit down and look at each of these things that we want to amend and look at them very seriously.
Okay.
And before I finish, I'd like to thank my friend for reminding me about my election. But there's a group called Subi, and is a member of it.
That's true.
And that's the group that played the game. And the game is known.
It's the group to which you lost the election and the petition.
No, you stole. You stole
let's
the
have the
election.
Honorable Minister.
You see?
Have
Did
his
you go
parting
to
shots.
court?
Honorable Minister, over to you. Your parting shots.
Captain Babu said it in passing, but whatever we are talking about is really about nation building. And nation building is continuous. I want to promise that we are going to restart the debate on electronic voting. We have been seeing how the Electoral Commission can make the election less expensive. We believe that we don't have to restrict the first phase of election only to president and MPs. Some other positions can also be elected on that same day. There are ways of doing it. We have come up with proposals which we want the Electoral Commission to give us feedback on, to color code ballot papers. You can color code so that even an illiterate can know that this color is for the president and it matches the color of the ballot box. You may need to get all the ballot papers at the same station. You don't need very many presiding officers. We must not act as if we are a very rich country in terms of cash.
If we were in court, I would object that in a rejoinder, the minister is introducing a new concept we have not debated.
No, because I tell you that we must innovate based on our experience. That is really the truth. Look at why are we not able to elect LC1s? Because we can't afford it. Why are we not electing the women councillors? Because we can't afford it. We need to be innovative in how we vote to make elections simpler. But otherwise, to console the Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, these proposals are not Mao proposals.
I know.
I have a compilation of proposals from citizens. Of course, they are now associated with me because I'm the minister. But the proposals that we are going to front load will be the most important and urgent ones. But when we reach that bridge phase, which I've talked about, then we must really work together as Ugandans to build the new Uganda.
Okay, let me just read two messages. A lot of messages have come through, but let me just read two. One comes in from Honorable John Ken Luchamuzi, President of the Conservative Party.
The man.
The man. The right to vote for the president, the right to vote the president in person is a fundamental right strictly derived from the right to self-determination. And to move away from it is call for mandatory referendum there, okay? Finally, there is Dr. Muhammad Tusime PhD here, says this reform is the most significant lifeline that will significantly safeguard Uganda's future. It entails simplicity to transition, it widens democratic values amongst all stakeholders. This reform is one of the keys that will stop anyone from overstaying in power, especially the president right now. I think he's talking about term limits there. I want to thank the panel, gentlemen and ladies, thank you very much for coming. And we'll end it this way. Be soft and not weak. Good morning.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Mascari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archived stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, every story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Humanity is facing very complex problems. They can only be solved together, taking each other's interests into account. Women leaders from 126 countries have arrived in St. Petersburg. The forum shows to women all around the globe that Russia is an open and hospitable country. The gravity of the forum is steadily growing. Your voices are being heard and governments of different countries are taking notice. Major international organizations consider your recommendations. Such participation and active work are extremely important for the processes of building a multipolar society, a just and truly free world. We all share these ideas and do everything possible to create a new progressive world.
The Japanese delegate from the G20 engagement group called Women 20 spoke with us from the forum. She described how participants are aiming to use women's empowerment to tackle other major issues.
I think for peace. I think we need the peace in this world, and if we can work together based on the understanding, grounded on culture, grounded on history, and grounded on the hope for the future, then we can cooperate. We have a lot of challenges on women and women's empowerment in society. Also, we have lots of challenges in local development in rural area. And I think we have these two combined together, and very interesting initiative is happening. So women's empowerment, women's entrepreneurship will really help to mobilize and revitalize the local economy and local new relationship to create the society better.
All right, do stay with us right here on RT. I'll be back with much more in just over half an hour from now. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.
need to counter the Russian state-controlled narrative.
Als Teil der Sanktionen gegen Russland gehen die westlichen Länder gegen russische Auslandssender vor.
Mais écoutez, monsieur, c'est pas à vous de décider de qui est journaliste ou pas dans ce pays. On est en France, quoi. C'est pas possible.
We will ban in the European Union the Kremlin's media machine. The state-owned Russia Today and Sputnik.
RT, Sputnik, even our video agency, roughly, all banned on YouTube.
Et merci à vous tous pour votre fidélité et votre soutien.
Washington's global war on information has entered new territory. Dissent is criminalized. Questioning authority is treasonous. If you watch this program, you may get a knock on your door. Western elites hold their citizens in contempt.
October 2023, a surprise attack launched against Israel by Hamas militants shocked the world. No one had expected the Palestinian radicals to have so many cutting-edge weapons. In the aftermath of the attack, militants openly and mockingly thanked the US and Ukraine for the rockets and missiles that rained down on Israeli cities.
نشكر السلطات الأوكرانية لبيعنا هذا السلاح. سوف نستخدمه ضد إسرائيل.
How can it be that arms are shipped to the Middle East from a country whose top officials constantly complain about shortages of ammunition and military equipment?
Зброя для України, боєприпаси для України, нові оборонні системи для України.
US and EU military aid totals tens of billions of dollars.
We'll continue to show the power of partnership, and we'll continue to bolster Ukraine's armed forces by rushing them the capabilities that they need to defend their country.
But where does this aid really go? And who decided to arm a country that has been one of the biggest supermarkets of smuggled weapons for almost 30 years?
اسمي رضوان مرتضى، أنا صحافي متخصص بشؤون الملفات الأمنية والقضائية والجماعات الإرهابية، ومن وقتها لهلا تخصصت تحديداً بالملفات الأمنية، وكنت عم تابع ملفات الجهاديين بلبنان وسوريا والعراق ومنطقة الشرق الأوسط.
Radvan Mortada is an independent Lebanese journalist, and during his career he's produced hundreds of reports on wars in the Middle East. He's met with Islamic jihadist leaders many times and knows exactly how weapons get into their hands.
في شيء هون هلا فرجيكم عليه، هي الخريطة. في شيء الأساسي اللي عم فرجيك عليه هو الخريطة. يعني هون مثلا كل حدود اللبنانية السورية فيها معابر غير شرعية بيمرقوا من خلالها المهربين اللي هن مهنتهم، اللي هن أبناء سكان هديك المناطق اللبنانية والسورية.
Radvan was shocked to learn that arms are trafficked to the Middle East mainly from Ukraine. His findings are corroborated by the largest arms dealers in the region.
هلا اللي رح نعمله رح نتصل بواحد من تجار السلاح بمنطقة البقاع لحتى يجي يحكي لنا، نصور نحن وياه مقابلة، يجي يخبرنا بالضبط شو وضع السلاح الأوكراني، هل في سلاح أوكراني عنا ولا لا، ومن وين عم يجي.
ألو.
ألو مرحبا.
يا هلا.
كيف حالك؟
تمام ماشي الحال، كيفك أنت؟
تمام. حبيبي كنا حاكيين كرمال إذا بدنا نصور مع ما غيره. ايمتى بنقدر؟
أنت بدك فينا اليوم فينا بكرة.
ويمشي قدامي بوصل لهونيك وبلاقي حدا ناطرني وبتمشوا بتدلوني.
بلاقيك الشاب وبجيبك لعنا.
Mafia arms dealers set up a meeting in a small town on the Lebanese border. One of the main arms trafficking routes in the Middle East passes through here.
هلا رايحين على البقاع، بدنا نقابل، بدنا نشوف بالضبط شو السلاح اللي موجود بالسوق، شو الاسعار اللي عم ينباع فيها، هل في طلب على سلاح هلا ولا لا، وشو ارتباط الحرب باوكرانيا بتهريب سلاح للمنطقه.
The Lebanese town of Zakhle, a 30-minute drive from the Syrian border. A meeting is arranged here with a guide who will take the journalist to a major arms dealer. An unremarkable grey house on the outskirts, but this modest exterior hides what resembles an arms warehouse. Arms smuggling is big business for the locals, and sometimes it's the only way to survive.
ليه اخترت هيدي المهنة طريقة للعيش؟
أهلنا وجدودنا كانوا يشتغلوا بموضوع السلاح، لأنه إحنا المنطقة اللي إحنا عايشين فيها الدولة ما بتقدم أي شيء، يعني ما في شيء عندنا اسمه دولة، لا عندنا مستشفيات، لا عندنا فرص عمل، ما عندنا شيء. وكل عمرنا أهلي وجدودي وجدود جدودي هن بيشتغلوا بموضوع السلاح.
These images were taken a year before the Palestinian-Israeli conflict escalated, a time when massive arms purchases started across the region.
السؤال هو هي الأسلحة منين بتجي؟
اليوم الأسلحة اللي أنت مثلا هول اللي شايفهم قدامك في عندنا مصدرين لإلهم. في ناس كثير من وراء الأزمة الاقتصادية، في ناس صارت تبيع أسلحة، يعني الطبقة الفقيرة والطبقة المعدومة اليوم هن عم بيبيعوا السلاح الفردي، مش ما في عندهم سلاح ثقيل أو متوسط، عندهم سلاح فردي عم يضطروا يبيعوه كرمال يعيشوا، وهذا الشيء من وراء الأزمة الاقتصادية. في كمان اليوم عم يجينا سلاح الأوكراني. بتعرف أنت ببداية الأزمة بأوكرانيا والحرب الناتو عطى الأوكران سلاح، هيدا السلاح بعدين عم التجار صاروا عم ياخذوه على تركيا، ومن تركيا عم بفوت على العراق، من العراق برا عم يجي على سوريا ولبنان. صرنا نلاقي بالسوق اليوم احنا كتجار عم ينعرض علينا انه سلاح قطع سلاح متوسط وخفيف، بيقولوا لنا هيدا سلاح الاوكراني تبع الناتو كذا، بتحس القطعه بعدها جديده، قطعه نظيفه وسلاح مرتب، بس سعره اغلى من سعر السلاح اللبناني والسلاح الموجود بالسوق، بس سلاحه كثير 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 مرتب، السلاح الاوكراني اللي عم يجي على السوق.
هو أكثر عم يجي مثل شو مثلا إذا فيك تحكي لي عنهم؟
في السلاح اللي عم يجي من اوكرانيا عبر سوريا بالبر، عم يجينا الكلاشنات وعم يجي البركسي وعم يجي الفرود الصغيره كلها جديده بعدها بكراتينا. الناس بتحب، يعني في عندنا طبقة الشباب بيحبوا يشتروا هيك شيء، يعني بتقول له هاي قطعة جاية من أوكرانيا بعدها بالكرتونة أو بعدها بشحنة مثل ما يقولوا، بيحبوا، فكل شيء عم يفوت متوسط، يعني سلاح البكسة وبالنازل بكسة كلاشن كوف، وعم يفوت عدد كبير من الفرود، يعني الفرود الصغيرة.
وهي قلت لي كمان كان فيها قناصات.
لأن موضوع القناصات فات قناصات، بس أكثر شيء عم يضلوا ينباعوا بسوريا القناصات، يعني فات كم قطعة على لبنان. اليوم القناصات مطلوبة بسوريا لأنه هونيك في حرب وما حرب. عندنا بلبنان مش كثير عم يستخدم القناص، الناس اليوم عم بيحبوا الرشاش والفرد اللي عم يجي من أوكرانيا.
Why are weapons from Ukraine spreading all over the world? Who turned this country into a major arms hub? To answer these questions, we need to go back in time to 1991. On December the 26th, 1991, Soviet news broadcast reported.
Здравствуйте, в эфире «Вести». СССР больше нет. Республики бывшей державы, за исключением Грузии и стран Балтии, их 11, учредили Содружество независимых государств. Его высшие органы – Совет глав государств и Совет глав правительств. Границы будут открытыми. Контроль за ядерными вооружениями единый. Структура и главнокомандование вооруженных сил сохраняются в прежнем виде до 30 декабря, до следующей встречи лидеров в Минске.
At the time, so-called Cold War arsenals were held in Ukraine, the world's largest warehouses of arms and military equipment, stored in case of a conflict with the United States.
Огромные массивы стрелкового оружия и огромные части личного состава, они остались в Украине. Плюс огромные массивы оружия, сосредоточенные на складах. Просто в поле, потом над ними возводили какие-то складские помещения, а потом огораживали колючей проволокой.
After July 1st, 1991, when the Warsaw Pact dissolved, the arsenals grew even bigger. The eight-nation Eastern European bloc, whose mission had been to maintain peace in post-war Europe, was abolished. Weapons from all Soviet military units were repatriated.
Сборы всегда дело хлопотное, особенно когда увозишь такое большое хозяйство.
Most of the weapons were sent to Ukraine.
Из ГДР, Чехословакии и Венгрии возвратятся на родину 6 танковых дивизий.
Кроме того, по решению правительства СССР сюда была выведена вся техника вооружения из Венгрии и Польши. Это была масса оружия, они сели на золотую почву.
After the Soviet Union collapsed, Ukraine, now independent, came into possession of, according to the most conservative estimates, 9,000 tanks, 11,000 armored vehicles, 18,000 artillery systems, 4,000 aircraft and helicopters, in addition to tens of millions of small arms and billions of rounds of ammunition. London's International Institute for Strategic Studies said Ukraine's military property was worth around $90 billion.
И все находилось там самое передовое. По тем временам на Украине были Т-80 танки.
Газотурбинный танк сможет уйти на 15-20 километров, что особенно важно при выходе по боевой тревоге.
Это был действительно очень передовой танк. Т-80 это с турбореактивным двигателем, он уникален был по себе, этот танк.
Within a month of the USSR's collapse, the new Ukrainian state launched a global sell-off of Soviet weapons. The first contracts were signed shortly after, and in 1991, a series of civil wars broke out in Yugoslavia. The war in Bosnia and Herzegovina was the largest of the conflicts.
Vidio sam raspad Jugoslavije, učestvovao sam u ratu. Određena znanja vojna sticao sam i tokom vojnog roka i kursa bezbjednosti u garnizonu Pančevo, vojnoj pošti 2875 kod generala Mladena Bratića.
In the early 1990s, Djevad Galjashevic was an intelligence officer in Bosnia. He saw how weapons flooded into the former Yugoslavia.
Mudžahedini, teroristi, dolazili su u vozilima, oklopnim transporterima UNPROFOR-a tadašnjeg, dakle međunarodnih organizacija. Ali dolazili su ljudi. Oružje je dolazilo uglavnom u sklopu letova na avionima koji su bili na raspolaganju, ali Izetbegoviću Antonov 2 je to uglavnom bio i njime su upravljali ukrajinski piloti. Ukrajinsko naoružanje i vojna oprema, jer su veze preko ukrajinskih pojedinih generala koji su sezale do vrha tadašnje ukrajinske vlasti i do predsjednika Leonida Kučme, koji su sezali do raznih ljudi u Ministarstvu odbrane.
Djevad has kept some of the documents that confirm the weapon's Ukrainian origin.
To bi onda otvorilo daleko krupnije pitanje odgovornosti političkog i državnog vrha za finansiranje terorizma, za ratne zločine na vozućoj, pogotovo u Srednjoj Bosni, dakle prema Hrvatima, na vozućoj prema Srbima i tako dalje. Firme Astra došao i S-300, došao je raketni sistem koji je tada bio čudo, koji je tada bio tek, dakle, praktično malo država ga je imalo. Zamislite da je Ukrajina od 2 koliko je imala u to doba 1 poslala u Hrvatsku.
I look forward to talking to you all.
That technology should work for people.
A robot must obey the orders given it by human beings except where such orders would conflict with the first law.
Show your identification.
We should be very careful about artificial intelligence.
The point, obviously, is to create trust rather than fear.
I would like to take on various jobs.
I mean, with artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon.
A robot must protect its own existence.
There was a time when her hospitality was abused. The European powers divided the continent of Africa amongst themselves. It was divided as a hunting ground. If we do not unite, the colonizers will come again. We know that there are those who want the mother continent to stagnate, but the mother continent can never be stopped, because the mother continent must be great, and she will only be great on the shoulders of our sons and daughters and by the sweat of thy brow. So all Africans of goodwill, come forth and let us converse about and around issues on the mother continent.
Heavy weapons were delivered to Bosnia by sea from Odessa. The cargo went through the Croatian ports of Rijeka and Split. Small arms and ammunition were often delivered by aircraft piloted by Ukrainians.
Svo vrijeme rata, 91-95, zvanično je bio embargo na uvoz oružja na područje SFRJ. Embargo kojeg je Ujedinjene nacije su usvojile. Međutim, u praksi taj embargo nije se poštivao. Doznao odmah kad je oboren taj Antonov, ukrajinski, to je bilo na tamo Plitvičkim jezerima, to je ko prašuma izgleda tamo gdje je on pao. Taj avion, Antonov, on i jeste transportni avion, to je ono iz Sovjetskog saveza još, jel? Njegov zadatak je bio da iz Hrvatske, ili sa Plesa iz Zagreba aerodroma, ili sa Krka, bio jedan na otoku Krku aerodrom, prevozi oružje, municiju za 5. muslimanski korpus.
Leonid Minin, an entrepreneur close to Ukraine's top leadership, was one of those who oversaw arms shipments. This rare footage shows Minin watching a small arms demonstration with colleagues. We'd never have learned of the existence of this major trafficker of death if it hadn't been for one odd incident.
Lui era proprietario di un albergo a Cinisello Balsamo e quindi questo albergo aveva la suite presidenziale all'ultimo piano, cioè suite presidenziale, un albergo non 4 stelle, però la sua stanzetta ce l'aveva. E allora raccattava prostitute che si portava in camera nella sua suite. Allora una di queste non è stata pagata, si è rivolta alla polizia e gli ha detto: caro, andate lì che trovate questo Minin con altre prostitute.
That was how the arms baron was caught by the Italian police. In his room they found piles of cocaine, $150,000 in cash, diamonds and documents in a briefcase.
В Италии его арестовали, и с ним были обнаружены вот эти вот огромные 2 чемодана, в которых была его вся документация. Он никому не доверял, возил это все исключительно с собой.
Here's one of the documents from that briefcase, an arms order signed by the Côte d'Ivoire's Minister of Defense. 5 million rounds of ammunition, 10,000 grenades, thousands of automatic rifles and grenade launchers.
Вот эта документация, она как раз являлась и ключиком к либерийскому экспорту, ключику к экспорту в Демократическую Республику Конго, в Буркина-Фасо, в Эритрею и Эфиопию.
Massimo Alberizzi is a legendary war journalist who specializes in reporting on conflicts in Africa.
E abbiamo scoperto questo traffico che Minin, organizzava dall'Ucraina per la fornitura di armi ai ribelli della Sierra Leone attraverso quello che era diventato il presidente, ex ribelle anche lui, della Liberia, Charles Taylor.
One of Minin's companies was called ETTE, which stands for Exotic and Tropical Timber Enterprise. Officially, it conducted logging operations in Liberia, but in fact, as confirmed by a UN Special Commission, it supplied arms to President Charles Taylor, a ruthless dictator guilty of genocide against his country's citizens.
Io poi sono andato a Monrovia, in Liberia, sono andato a visitare la fabbrica per vedere di trovare altra documentazione lì, ma nello stesso tempo riforniva di armi i ribelli del RUF attraverso la mediazione del presidente della Liberia. Taylor.
You're right. You're damn right.
This is not a military coup. This is a pure civilian uprising.
Using dummy companies, Minin acquired weapons through the Ukr Spetsexport Corporation, a government entity, which in the early 2000s was the main supplier of weapons to African dictators.
З перших днів існування Укрспецекспорт почав виконувати визначені державою завдання. Одне із них – сприяння у реалізації надлишків військової техніки і озброєнь, успадкованих від СРСР. Невдовзі з'явилися перші солідні контракти.
But payments for the deadly cargoes were usually made in ways uncommon for government entities.
In cambio poi i pagamenti di queste cose possono avvenire col petrolio, per esempio. Non ti pago cash in dollari, ma ti pago con forniture petrolifere, forniture di diamanti, forniture in altro modo.
Африканский бизнес с украинскими вооружениями был завязан на так называемые кровавые алмазы. Их легко перевозить, их не берет ни один там сканер, там, в отличие от металлов, допустим, от того же золота. А так килограмм, полкилограмма, 200 грамм алмазов – это уже огромная сумма.
For large shipments of weapons, Ukrainian war barons chartered aircraft which were registered in offshore zones. Most arms shipments were carried on a BAC-111, owned by an Israeli businessman of Ukrainian origin, Leonid Minin. Registered in the Caymans, it was operated by Limad, a firm registered in Monaco. These are photos of one of the airlines that arrived in Liberia, circumventing the UN arms embargo. It's stacked full of weapons boxes. The plane was owned by Leonid Minin.
The first delivery arranged by Minin in March 1999 was a cargo of 68 tons of military equipment, including 3,000 AKM assault rifle, 1 million rounds of ammunition, 25 RPGs, 7s, and related ordnance, Sterla 3, and Metis systems, and 80 related missiles. The arms were bought from the Ukrainian arms marketing company, Укрспецекспорт.
Minin's and his business partners' names and their involvement in Укрспецекsport's arms deliveries surfaced during investigations into arms dealing in the Middle East.
Payments of the shipment show the global nature of the arms deal arranged by Minin. Italian prosecution authorities were directed, reportedly by Minin himself, to a Hungarian bank account owned by a company allegedly related to Minin. Further payments from the same amount were made to various companies, including Spet Export, Airfoil, Transbalkan Cargo Service, Phonex, Arsenal Corp, General Technical Bulgaria.
The scale of the trade is astonishing. Hundreds of thousands of tons of contraband were plied between the continents. For some odd reason, it went unnoticed for many years.
The second arms delivery arranged by Minin was routed via Côte d'Ivoire rather than Burkina Faso. The arms deal consisted of 113 tons of arms brokered through the Ukrainian state-owned company and included 10,500 AK-47 assault rifle, 120 sniper guns, 100 grenade launcher, night vision equipment, and 8 million rounds of ammunition. A portion of these arms was delivered in July 2000, apparently destined for Côte d'Ivoire, using an end-user certificate signed on May 26, 2000 by a senior official of the Ministry of Defense.
The officials mentioned in the documents, their patrons in Kyiv and Minin and his friends didn't seem to be on intelligence agencies' radars. Minin had easily obtained numerous international passports found during the raid on his hotel room in Italy.
Lui aveva un passaporto tedesco, un passaporto, stavamo dicendo quello, un passaporto ucraino, passaporto di servizio israeliano, quindi aveva anche quello, che questo gli permetteva di poter girare molto facilmente. Però indica che aveva delle buone entrature, per cui anche lì bisognerebbe perché avesse tutti questi passaporti, che poi negavano perché, ma io i tedeschi non gli abbiamo mai dato il passaporto, lui ce l'aveva.
During his investigation, the journalist concluded that without the support of US top brass, it would have been impossible to implement such a colossal trade of Ukrainian arms. Through the black market, they managed to solve some sensitive issues.
Abbiamo messo le mani su questa immensa quantità di documenti che ci hanno permesso di capire le prove sono nei way bill, le prove sono nei pagamenti, le prove sono nei fascicoli delle banche. Però ci sono anche tutti i rapporti che loro intrattenevano tra di loro, queste persone, nel fare i loro affari, gli affari di vario genere. Ecco. Il mercato illegale delle armi è nascosto, è segreto proprio perché è illegale. E lui abbiamo trovato su questa documentazione che era l'autore delle queste vendite di armi, ma non era anche quello che intratteneva rapporti su una serie di trafficanti d'armi, per esempio con Mark Rich, famoso trafficante d'armi graziato da Clinton negli ultimi giorni della sua presidenza.
Minin's billionaire lifestyle, dalliances with African terrorists and connections with politicians and government officials all around the world even inspired Hollywood. The film's story is quite accurate. But unlike Nicolas Cage's character, cops didn't go after Minin. Despite overwhelming evidence, an Italian court only charged him with possession of drugs and diamonds.
Cioè, in Italia la giustizia è piuttosto lunga. Ci sono i poveracci che aspettano di avere giustizia anni. Il signor Minin riesce ad avere l'appello e poi la Cassazione, dove viene assolto, in meno di un anno. Questo è inquietante. Devo dire che cerchiamo di capire che fine ha fatto, non si sa bene che fine ha fatto.
The vagaries of Italy's judicial system can be explained by one thing only. Minin was a link in a chain of interested and very powerful parties. So powerful that just for them, the Ukrainian parliament adopted special laws. For instance, law number 1919.
Феноменальное законодательство, когда любой человек мог заниматься экспортом оружия, которое записывалось не как оружие, а просто как товар. Просто и это соответствовало украинскому законодательству. То есть специально дырки такие в законодательстве были сделаны.
Many knew that Ukraine traded arms on a statewide scale, but the true sales volumes were uncovered by accident when in 2008, Somali pirates seized a cargo ship, the MV Faina.
В такой бинокль мы увидели пиратов впервые.
Faina's captain, Viktor Nikolsky, is now retired, but these photos on the walls and newspaper clippings remind him of past events. They're prominently displayed so that his family doesn't forget the hell Captain Nikolsky had to endure.
Захват судна происходил в 16:00 на стыке вахт. Мы заметили на горизонте шлюпку. На шлюпке люди размахивали руками. Приближались, и потом началась стрельба. Получалось так, у них техника до захвата была отработана. Одна группа лезет на борт судна, вторая прикрывает их огнем. Пробито было все, что можно. И еще вдобавок 2 выстрела из РПГ было. И один упал в море, плюхнулся, не долетев до борта, а второй ударился в борт, но не взорвался. Вот. Из этого я уже давно сделал вывод. Не могли пираты знать о характере груза, сами пираты. Потому что если бы они знали, что там огромное количество взрывчатки перевозится, они бы ни за что не стрельнули, потому что 10 тысяч тонн взорвавшись, они бы там большую воронку в море сделали вместе с этими пиратами. Когда они увидели, спустились в трюм, посмотрели, конечно, глаза пиратов радостно заблестели, потому что такого куша никогда не было.
Washington's global war on information has entered new territory. Dissent is criminalized. Questioning authority is treasonous. If you watch this program, you may get a knock on your door. Western elites hold their citizens in contempt.
Я Гавриил Дорошин, уроженец Франции, но русский доброволец. Каждый русский человек переживает за Россию. И когда начал понимать, что уже Запад угрожает уже России, естественно, я принял решение сюда приехать, потому что иначе не могло быть. Вопрос быстро был решен. И даже не задумался, что такое война, что тут ожидать и прочее. Ну, как бы, ты просто приезжаешь, потому что надо приехать и будь что будет. Судьба такая. Поменял Париж на село Малая Шишовка. Ну, а что же там вышка есть, так что ничего страшного, это как Эйфелева башня. Только она еще круче, потому что на Эйфелевой башне русского флага нету пока.
Breaking news, Israel announces a new phase of war as it moves troops to its northern border with Lebanon while pledging to return its displaced citizens to their homes there. That's as a new wave of mobile device explosions kills at least 20 and wounds over 450 more in Lebanon. Just a day after 12 died and 2,800 were injured there in a mass pager bombing strike. A Taiwanese company and its Hungarian business partner both deny producing the deadly pagers. The devices were allegedly detonated remotely by Israel.
I want to thank Meta, and I hope our committee's interest in this subject helped move you yesterday when you guys decided to take down RT and related Russian influence operations.
And delight in the U.S. Senate, where members welcome Meta's decision to censor and remove all RT accounts from its platforms, as senators claim the government continues to protect free speech. From our headquarters in Moscow, I'm Rachel Rubel. This is RT International. We start with breaking news. Israel's defense minister says the country is launching a new phase of war. He has ordered some of his troops to divert from Gaza to the border with Lebanon. This comes shortly after that country was struck by 2 days of widespread mobile device explosions, killing at least 26 people and wounding more than 3,000.
The center of gravity is moving north.
meaning that we are allocating forces, resources, and energy for the northern arena. We have not forgotten the hostages, and we have not forgotten our mission in the south. We are committed to our duties, and we are carrying them out simultaneously.
Online footage is spreading that allegedly shows Israel moving Merkava tanks to the border with Lebanon. The IDF earlier announced preparations for a possible escalation of the conflict with Hezbollah. Wednesday also saw a continuing exchange of fire between Israel and Hezbollah as Israeli jets targeted buildings across southern Lebanon. The IDF says it was in response to the 40 rockets that the militant forces launched into Israel. The Lebanese paramilitary group says it has lost 5 members in Israeli attacks from the pager bombings and other airstrikes. This comes amid accusations from Hezbollah and Iran that Israel is responsible for the electronic detonations in Lebanon. The Iranian envoy to the UN says Tehran sees the attacks as an act of terror and vows retaliation. Its ambassador to Lebanon was wounded by an explosion. RT correspondent Joel Maroon is in Beirut and brings us the latest details.
Not long ago, explosions were heard across various regions of southern Lebanon. We have received information that at least 1 person is confirmed dead, although more are believed to have been killed. This new wave of explosions affected wireless devices, and today we're not only talking about pagers, but also radios like walkie-talkies. That's according to a Lebanese security source speaking with RT. The Lebanese Ministry of Health also announced a short while ago that there are hundreds of wounded citizens, and calls are going out from hospitals to donate blood. Right now, we're in front of a hospital emergency room in the Hamra area of Beirut. We can see that Lebanese army and security forces are setting up a security cordon around the hospitals where the wounded have begun to arrive. There are also members of the victims' families who have arrived here to find out about their relatives. The Lebanese foreign minister a short while ago called this new attack a blatant violation of the country's sovereignty. He also called on the international community to stop Israel from violating Lebanese sovereignty in such a manner. A reminder that this is the 2nd day in a row that these explosions have occurred. Just half an hour after these attacks, the Lebanese Health Ministry announced that there were more than 100 injuries throughout the country. Hundreds of injured are receiving care, and again, hospitals are calling for blood donations. And amid the panic caused by the exploding devices, there are also funerals taking place for Lebanon's citizens.
The Lebanese Red Cross has responded to multiple explosions in different regions of the country. Reports have indicated Hezbollah members are using the handheld radios, and video footage appears to show the aftermath of explosions on streets and inside apartments. The walkie-talkies that detonated on Wednesday are said to have been made by a Japanese firm. RT correspondents Yusuf Jalali and Yasin Ekin have an update.
For starters, Hezbollah has issued a statement suggesting that this new wave of attacks is not going to go unpunished. They say that they face a new challenge. Of course, how Hezbollah plans on dealing with the wave of attacks targeting electronical as well as communications devices is going to be a matter of interest moving forward, particularly because after 24 hours after the first wave of attacks, Hezbollah has essentially suffered a very similar scenario. But the important thing here is, of course, to note that the only people that have been targeted are, of course, not Hezbollah members, but most importantly that civilians have been caught in the crossfire, which really begs the question just about how did Israel go about doing this? There are so many theories out there. Of course, the theory that there was a supply chain attack is picking up the most traction. The Turkish president reached out to the Lebanese prime minister, expressing his sympathies, but also his condolences to those that were killed and injured as a result of these attacks. This was early on Wednesday, moments before the second wave of attacks hit Lebanon. But of course, what we're looking at right now is a different approach, or at least a difference in this kind of attack, because on Tuesday when the attack initially took place, the devices that were targeted were pagers, but today we're receiving reports suggesting that the devices also include radios, whether they're home radios, car radios, laptops, fingerprint scanners, essentially anything with an electrical circuit board has also been affected as a result of this attack. And what we do know at this point, the Israelis, of course, have been silent, and the general theory is that Israel is quiet because of operational security. But then that also begs the question, then what is Israel planning moving forward? Because we understand this type of warfare, this hybrid warfare, uses asymmetrical methods to ensure that it carries out attacks against its enemies, in this case that is Hezbollah, but also it does so in a strategic sense. We understand that the tactic that is being used is being essentially issued for one very specific reason, and that is to, of course, overwhelm Lebanon's health system. This typically happens in advance of a larger campaign. Of course, this would require months of planning. We understand that the Israelis have been planning this for months, and just this past week they have decided and essentially agreed to include Lebanon's southern border, at least its southern territories, as part of its scope and its vision moving forward. Of course, what that's going to look like at this very moment is unclear, but the one thing that is clear is, of course, Hezbollah has vowed to react and retaliate against these attacks. We can expect Israel to do the same, and this perpetual cycle will continue, which will, of course, lead to further unrest. And many leaders within the region suggest that there is this wave of violence that we cannot seem to get our heads around, we can't seem to walk away from, and these back and forth and tit-for-tat attacks will continue, and unless something is done, this will lead into something much, much broader, which will put more lives at risk.
Criticism is mounting in Iran, with officials pointing fingers at Israel and many labeling the recent explosions as a blatant act of terrorism. President Masoud Pezeshkian also weighed in today, placing much of the blame on the West's irresponsible support for Israel. In a cabinet meeting today, he described the situation as a disgrace for Israel's Western allies, particularly the U.S., accusing them of abandoning their principles in favor of what he calls an inhumane agenda, which he sees as a prime example of a decline in humanity within the West.
Using tools normally meant to enhance the welfare of humans as a means of terror and destruction against those whose views do not align with us is proof of the decline of humanity and of the dominance of savagery and criminality. This event once again showed that although the Western states and Americans claim they want a ceasefire, in practice they offer full support for blind crimes, killings, and assassinations.
The Iranian president stressed the urgent need for Muslim nations to unite against what he termed the ongoing atrocities committed by Israel. Iran's response to the incident has been really swift, especially with eyes on Tehran following the recent assassination of former Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. The country has also played a big role in, of course, providing relief to those injured in the Lebanese attack. In fact, Iran was among the first to dispatch medical relief teams to Lebanon. The Iranian Red Crescent has already arrived on the scene to assist victims, and we've learned that several injured individuals will be transported to Iran for further medical care later today. We had hoped to report from Mehrabad Airport to speak with some of those affected and gain a clearer image of what happened in Lebanon. However, the Red Crescent informed us that due to security concerns, we cannot film anything there, of course, because many of the injured are reportedly Hezbollah members. This incident has struck a nerve in Tehran, and the rhetoric in Tehran has increased significantly as we see different Iranian officials are talking about a serious revenge. Many are now asking the Iranian government here in Tehran, people are asking the Iranian government to not stay idle in the face of the ongoing provocations on the part of Israel, especially when it comes to the fact that one of the Iranian officials, the Iranian ambassador to Lebanon, Mojtaba Amani, was one of those who were affected by the incident.
Well, following the pager detonations on Tuesday, the Taiwan-based company that owns the brand announced it didn't produce the devices. It claims a subcontractor based in Hungary made them, but that business also has denied any involvement. With still no official word from Israel, despite much speculation that it carried out the sophisticated attack, Budapest has issued a statement clarifying that the devices in question have never even been in Hungary.
Authorities have confirmed that the company in question is a trading intermediary with no manufacturing or operational site in Hungary. It has one manager registered at its declared address, and the reference devices have never been in Hungary.
Well,
over 24 hours since the pager explosions in Lebanon, still no official response from Israel. Despite direct accusations from Hezbollah, as well as the Lebanese government, Israel has remained dead silent and hasn't claimed responsibility for the attack. The government press office, which typically sends out multiple updates to foreign journalists each day, has been quiet. On the army's social media channels, there is coverage of the IDF's routine activities in Gaza and along the Lebanese border in the country's north, but the pager blasts aren't mentioned. And just recently, a new post appeared on Prime Minister's Telegram channel where he expressed condolences for the deaths of 4 Israeli military personnel in Gaza. But as for the beepers, no mention. Meanwhile, the attention is slowly shifting from who is behind to how did this attack happen at all. It was initially considered as cyber warfare, as you remember, but now experts suggest the pagers were fitted with remotely activated explosive devices. Citing a senior Lebanese security source and another unnamed source, Reuters claims that Israel's foreign intelligence agency allegedly planted explosives inside 5,000 pagers imported by Hezbollah 5 months before Tuesday's detonations. This operation, a serious breach of Hezbollah's security, we have to say, was months in preparation, the media says. All eyes are now on Gold Apollo, Taiwan-based company that Hezbollah ordered the pagers from. The company's CEO stated that the devices used in the Lebanon blasts were manufactured by its sister company located in Hungary.
We didn't design it. We didn't manufacture it. The company just bought a licensed logo from us. It has nothing to do with me.
Well, in theory, explosives could have been placed inside the devices after they were manufactured or even after arriving in Lebanon. Investigators are considering all possibilities, but the manufacturer has been under significant scrutiny, of course. In response to this unwanted attention, the Hungarian cabinet stated that the company in question is private and has never received government orders. Israel's major ally and all-time supporter, the U.S., keeps insisting it had no knowledge of the attack in Lebanon. We heard that previously from Pentagon and White House officials, and now Secretary of State Blinken, currently in Cairo, Egypt, has reiterated that America neither knew about nor participated in the operation. The pager explosions occurred just a day after the Iranian president said Tehran might engage in direct talks with the U.S. potentially if Washington shows in practice that it is not hostile towards the Islamic Republic, a potential reconciliation that Israel is clearly not interested in.
The United States did not know about, nor was it involved in these incidents, and we're still gathering the information and gathering the facts. And we remain very clear about the importance of all parties avoiding any steps that could further escalate the conflict that we're trying to resolve in Gaza, to see it spread to other fronts. It's clearly not in the interest of anyone involved to see that happen. We're focused on getting this ceasefire over the finish line. That would also, I think, materially improve the prospects of actually defusing the situation in northern Israel and southern Lebanon. It's imperative that everyone avoid taking steps that could further escalate or spread the conflict.
The U.S. has long claimed to be a peacemaker in the region, but with little success, as tensions have only worsened recently. In a recent attempt to help prevent an all-out war between Tel Aviv and Hezbollah, America's special envoy visited Israel on Monday, but left empty-handed, as Israel's defense minister, Mr. Gallant, insisted a military operation is necessary to safely return northern residents to their homes. Some argue that America acts as a mediator, but with a clear bias toward one side.
And Iran's fingerprints are all over all of the bad things that are going on in this region. And Iran needs to end its support for these proxies, and they need to do it now. And we need to all work for de-escalation of this conflict. That is of paramount importance right now.
What about Israel's fingerprints all over the region?
I don't know what you're talking about.
America's Secretary of Defense, Austin, is expected in Israel next week again. Unclear what will change. Meanwhile, Hezbollah promises to retaliate with no clear indication of when exactly it might happen, which leaves the situation very tense. The Israeli army insists no changes to the home front command directives, but we hear unconfirmed reports that the IDF has redeployed its elite 98th Division from the Gaza Strip to the Northern Command in preparation for a possible escalation. And we have to understand and remember that if Hezbollah answers, Israel will retaliate to this retaliation, and that would put the entire region in danger.
Well, we discussed this in depth with Global Policy Institute senior fellow George Samueli, who spoke to us from the site of BAC Consulting in Budapest, the Hungarian firm linked to the devices.
Slightest, as you can see from behind me, this is very much a residential neighborhood. There could be office spaces here, but it's essentially residential. There are families living here. There is no way at all that anything could be manufactured here. Big questions asked about this company. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that while the website was taken down, the LinkedIn page for the company is still up. And if you look at the LinkedIn page, it's not at all clear that this company does anything. All is there is the familiar corporate gobbledygook, absolutely meaningless, and gives you no indication at all of what it is that this company does. So it looks like rather a phony company set up in order to be a front for some kind of transactions. But there's no sense at all that this is anything other than a front for something, a holding company, a shell company, whatever. But it doesn't look at all like it's a company that does any kind of a business, performs any kind of a service.
Well, U.S. media are now reporting Israel informed Washington on Tuesday about its plans for the Lebanon operation without providing details. The United States now appears to be distancing itself from Israel, stressing Washington was not involved in the explosions.
What I can tell you is we were not involved in yesterday's incidents or today's in any way, and I don't have anything more to share. I have nothing more to add on these incidents. I understand the question. I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals or speculate about what did or didn't happen or who might be responsible.
Is there any current intelligence assessment as to who was responsible?
I'm not going to get into intelligence estimates and assessments from here either.
Earlier, we spoke to Israeli journalist and activist Emily Schrader, who disagrees with that position.
Israel never claimed any formal responsibility in the past, even for major operations that we know weren't confirmed until sometimes decades later. I don't think that Israel is the only possibility, however. There is a possibility that it could be the United States or perhaps other actors or perhaps a joint operation. We don't know all of the details yet, so I would hesitate to say, yes, for sure it's Israel, or yes, for sure it's someone else. Of course, this is an escalation. However, it's an escalation in response to over 8,000 projectiles being fired over the Syrian and Lebanese border by Hezbollah at the direction of the Islamic Republic at Israeli communities. And so to say that Israel is the one who started this, or Israel is the one who is initiating this into a wider regional war, is just completely inaccurate. This is actually a very targeted strike, not indiscriminate at all. The fact that there are civilian injuries or casualties in any military conflict, they're unfortunately a fact of life. That's very, very sad. But to say that this was indiscriminate is just simply inaccurate. I mean, we're talking about one of the most precise attacks in modern warfare. We're talking about thousands of the actual activists, the actual operatives, terrorist operatives of Hezbollah in Lebanon being targeted on their personal devices, these pagers that they're using. I mean, this is really unprecedented, in fact, in a positive way when it comes to dealing with modern warfare. There's no shortage of criticism from the Israeli public towards the government, of course, and of course even towards the military and the intelligence establishment regarding October 7th. This is something that needs to be investigated thoroughly. That being said, of course, they are more awake, paying more attention, acting preemptively if necessary in order to protect Israeli civilians as much as humanly possible. So at the same time, it is a little bit of a head scratcher. It's also somewhat logical. We are in a state of war. We weren't October 6th. So the reality today is a little bit different, of course.
Officials in Washington claim the integrity of upcoming presidential elections is once again in danger, and the threat is coming from Moscow. A U.S. Senate hearing dedicated to uncovering the looming foreign influence praised the ban of RT accounts on Meta platforms, as well as publicly acknowledging that Meta was sharing information with American government. American officials have welcomed Meta's decision to censor and remove RT accounts from Meta's platforms, all while loudly praising the importance of free speech.
Putin clearly understands if he wants to try to undermine support, American support for Ukraine, weighing in and frankly putting up fake information can help him in that matter. We've seen Iran dramatically increase their efforts to stoke social discord in the U.S., while again potentially seeking to shape elections. I do want to acknowledge that in these recent efforts, you all have played a positive role. I want to thank Meta, and I hope our committee's interest in this subject helped move you yesterday when you guys decided to take down RT and related Russian influence operations.
It also turns out RT isn't the only media target that Washington is focused on. Meta has removed more than 20 sites that offered voices from China and Iran, among others, and drew the gratitude of U.S. officials. According to Wednesday's U.S. Senate hearing, there are many countries eager to interfere in America's November elections.
China, Russia, Iran have been, North Korea, others have been designated as foreign adversaries. The truth is, we're 48 days away from an election. And the final point I want to make clear is that we need to do all we can before the election. But I also think it's not like at the end of election night, particularly assuming how close this election will be, that this will be over.
Earlier this week, U.S. tech company Meta removed RT from its platforms while parroting the U.S. government's election interference accusations. Meta is owned by Mark Zuckerberg, who notably admitted previously to censoring content on his platforms at the request of U.S. officials. In just a two-week period, the U.S. has sanctioned RT and accused it of interfering in upcoming American elections. RT brushed off the claims, recalling the many times the Russian media outlet has been accused of interference and always been proven not guilty. The State Department even blamed RT for lack of world support for Ukraine. We spoke with human and labor rights lawyer Dan Kovalik, who says American officials are afraid of the truth coming out.
The U.S. narrative on issues like Ukraine, Gaza, are falling apart, and not because of alleged Russian propaganda, but because the facts on the ground contradict what the U.S. is claiming about those conflicts. What they're worried about is the truth getting out. And the polls show Americans, by and large, don't agree what the U.S. State Department is saying about these conflicts. 80% of Democrats, 80% oppose the war in Gaza. A majority of the people in America, when you include Republicans, still oppose the war in Gaza, and a majority of Americans polled oppose sending more money to Ukraine. What the U.S. government is upset about is people just aren't believing them. They're not believing their lies anymore.
All while praising the restriction of RT accounts, senators are also somehow praising the importance of free speech. There's a clip I want to play first. Let's take a listen.
We take seriously the importance of protecting free expression and access to a range of viewpoints, while also maintaining and enforcing responsible policy frameworks. A critical aspect of that responsibility is doing our part to protect the integrity of democratic processes around the world.
So I'll paraphrase, to protect free speech, we have to limit free speech. That's a bit contradictory. What are your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, it's a joke. And for them to talk about the U.S. preserving democracy around the world, the U.S. is the biggest interferer in other countries' political systems than any other country on earth. The U.S. overthrows other governments by force, by chicanery, and often installs authoritarian governments in the place of democratic government. So, you know, again, I think people are just seeing the truth. These are lies that are being promulgated.
The West and its allies have condemned the Russian operation against Georgia in 2008 for 16 years. But the Georgian prime minister has now revealed that the country's leading political party at the time was responsible for the drastic escalation, and that direction came from abroad.
It was not an issue of starting a war, but an issue of mutual forgiveness and reconciliation that enraged the radical opposition, as it contradicts the reason why the Saakashvili regime followed an assignment from abroad and began the war in 2008. It is exactly the reconciliation subject that is tragic for the radical opposition. It once again confirms why the Georgian Dream Party should have a constitutional majority.
In 2008, the government in Tbilisi announced a military operation to repatriate the breakaway republics of Abkhazia and South Ossetia after the Soviet Union dissolved. Russian forces declared a peacekeeping operation against the Georgian assault on August 8th. 5 days later, hostilities ended. Georgia left the region, and Moscow recognized the independence of both breakaway republics. Western media was quick to denounce Russia and claim it was responsible, despite Moscow saying Georgia attacked. A surprising EU-backed report appeared after the war's first anniversary that blamed Georgia for starting that 5-day war with Russia. The West kept promoting its narrative, even interrupting witnesses of that war during a live broadcast.
I just want to say that I was running from Georgian troops bombing our city, not Russian troops. I want to say thank you to the Russian troops that were helping us out.
I want you to know to whom to blame on this conflict. That's Mr. Saakashvili, who started this war, and Mr. Saakashvili, who is aggressor, and who in 2 days my people, Ossetian people, were killed and were underbombed, and 2,000 people were killed in 1 day, and that's what I am against.
I would never cut you off. Unfortunately, a commercial break will take us there in 4 seconds, whether we like it or not. I'll bring you back after the commercial.
You don't want to hear that.
I'll be right back with you.
We spoke with Timur Maisharajeh, former Georgian parliament member, who says it's the West and U.S. in particular who instigates conflicts around the world to undermine its adversaries.
For many years, Western countries have been developing and fueling hatred between Georgia, Abkhazia, between Georgia, Ossetia, so that we would never think to restore old, friendly relations. We have been living in friendship for hundreds of years. We are brothers, one might say, with neighboring Abkhazia. But someone managed to break us up, and this, of course, was the West. We understand this perfectly well. Maybe someone didn't understand this earlier, but everything is open now and transparent to everyone. If we talk specifically about who is to blame for the conflict and discord now, it was the United States of America. They are acting through their European colleagues, through the fifth column, which was present in our country and is present in Europe. By the way, the war in Ukraine was played out with the same hands. The task of the United States of America